What if the true history of mankind is not written in books, but buried in stone? Every ancient ruin, every forgotten artifact seems to whisper a story that contradicts what we're taught. How did people thousands of years ago carve granite as if it were clay or align massive monuments to distant stars with mathematical precision? Were they guided by gods, or were the gods simply misunderstood humans from an age of knowledge we no longer remember? Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not how they built, but why they stopped. Somewhere between myth and archaeology lies the truth, a truth that may redefine who we really are. High in the Indian Himalayas, where the air thins and the snow never fully melts, lies a small, silent lake that guards one of humanity's strangest mysteries. Rupkund, a glacial lake nestled more than 5,000 meters above sea level in the state of Uttarakhand, seems at first glance nothing more than a frozen pool surrounded by jagged peaks. But when the ice begins to thaw, what surfaces is not the reflection of the mountains, but the faces of the dead. Hundreds of human skeletons, their bones bleached white by centuries of cold, rest along its shores. Some still clutch wooden walking sticks. Others lie entwined as if they fell together in the same instant. What do you think happened here? An ancient tragedy, a ritual gone wrong, or something even stranger? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The world came to know of Rupkund's secret in 1942, when a British forest ranger stumbled upon the lake during patrol. Beneath the melting snow, he found bones, hundreds of them, scattered along the edge and floating in the icy water. Initial reports spread quickly: a lake of skeletons hidden in the Himalayas, an ancient tragedy frozen in time. Soldiers were sent to investigate, fearing it might be evidence of Japanese soldiers crossing into India during World War II. But what they found confounded them even more. The bones were centuries old, and there were far too many to make sense of. Over time, the number of skeletons discovered was estimated between 300 and 800 individuals, making it one of the most densely packed mass death sites at such altitude anywhere on Earth. Yet there were no signs of battle, no weapons, and no organized burial. The remains seemed simply to have fallen where they died, scattered randomly around the water's edge. Some skulls bore perfectly round cracks, small circular depressions on the crown, as if struck by blunt objects falling from above. But their hands, ribs, and legs showed no signs of struggle or defense. It was as if death had fallen from the sky. For decades, theories multiplied like the layers of snow that cover Rupkund each year. Some said it was the site of a forgotten battle where soldiers had perished in the thin mountain air. Others suggested it was an ancient caravan of traders caught in a storm, or a pilgrimage gone horribly wrong. A few even whispered of curses, divine punishment, for trespassing into a sacred place. The first scientific attempts to solve the mystery began in the 1950s, but with limited tools, researchers could only guess at the age of the bones. It wasn't until carbon dating in the early 2000s that the story began to take a strange turn. To the astonishment of scientists, not all the skeletons were the same age. One cluster dated back to around 800 CE, while another group appeared to have died more than 1,000 years later in the 1800s. The idea that Rupkund Lake had claimed victims in multiple eras separated by centuries shattered earlier assumptions. Even more puzzling were the genetic results. DNA analysis revealed that the dead were not all of local Himalayan descent. Some shared genetic similarities with people from the Mediterranean, possibly from Greece or the Levant. How could individuals from thousands of kilometers away have ended up in a remote Himalayan valley with no recorded route connecting the two worlds. Were they explorers, pilgrims, or something else entirely? The mountain gave no answer. Then, in 2004, a multinational team of scientists combining archaeology, forensics, and climatology made a discovery that reignited global fascination. They found that nearly every skull had suffered from a blunt, round trauma approximately 2 centimeters in diameter, consistent with being struck by large hailstones, some as heavy as a cricket ball. These injuries, combined with the absence of defensive wounds, supported a chilling hypothesis: the victims had been killed by an unprecedented hailstorm, an event so violent that it wiped out an entire group in minutes. This death from the sky theory, while seemingly fantastic, fits local legend. The people of the region tell an ancient song about King Yastaval of Kanauj, who once led a royal pilgrimage to the goddess Nanda Devi, accompanied by his wife, servants, and dancers. For offending the goddess, perhaps by their arrogance or the blasphemous joy of music, divine wrath came in the form of iron balls from heaven. The storm, they said, struck without warning and left none alive. Could Rupkund be the physical echo of that legend? And yet, even as some mysteries seem to find answers, others multiply. The DNA evidence shows that not all the skeletons belong to the same expedition, nor even to the same millennium. Some are local, others foreign. Some ancient, others relatively recent. It appears that Rupkund Lake has been claiming lives over and over again. Not one tragedy, but many layered through time. The reason why people kept coming to this desolate place remains unknown. Was it a sacred site? A route of pilgrimage to Nanda Devi? A dangerous trade pass, or something deeper, a magnetic, inexplicable draw that has lured humans into its deadly circle for more than 1,000 years? Every summer, when the snows retreat, the lake seems to awaken. Skeletons rise slowly to the surface, glistening under the sunlight, only to be swallowed again by the next year's frost. It's as if the dead refuse to rest. Climbers describe the site as eerily quiet even for the Himalayas, the only sound being the wind howling through hollow skulls and the crunch of bone underfoot. Scientists descend with instruments and respect. Pilgrims leave offerings, locals whisper prayers, but the mountain watches in silence. The greatest enigma of Rupkund Lake is that no explanation fits perfectly. Every theory, hailstorm, epidemic, ritual, or accident solves one part of the puzzle and breaks another. The carbon dates don't align with the legends. The presence of Mediterranean DNA doesn't match the supposed isolation of the region. The hailstone injuries explain some deaths, but not all. It's as though the lake itself holds multiple stories folded within each other, refusing to be reduced to a single truth. And so, the mystery endures. Despite DNA sequencing, isotope analysis, and even climate modeling, Rupkund remains an unsolved equation of history, where every new discovery deepens the shadow instead of dispelling it. For all our progress, we stand like the first ranger in 1942, staring at a frozen lake filled with bones, and wondering what really happened here. Perhaps Rupkund is more than a site of death. Perhaps it is a mirror reflecting the human desire to know, to categorize, to bring order to chaos. But the mountains do not yield easily. They keep their secrets buried in the ice beneath layers of time and silence. Each bone, pulled from Rupkund, carries a fragment of a story. Yet when assembled, the narrative slips through our fingers like snow. Today, the lake is both a scientific curiosity and a haunting monument. Researchers must obtain special permission to approach it carrying equipment instead of weapons and reverence instead of fear. The bones are catalogued, preserved, and sometimes even returned to rest. Yet none of them speak. Their mouths, forever frozen open, seem to whisper only questions. Why here? Why them? Why then? And that perhaps is the truest legacy of the skeletons of Rupkund Lake, a mystery that refuses to die. Long after the snow covers them once more, and the winds erase every footprint, the questions remain suspended in the thin Himalayan air. Were these victims of the sky of their own faith, or of something the earth itself unleashed? Until the day someone finally hears their story whispered from beneath the ice, Rupkund will remain what it has always been, a riddle carved in bone, preserved in cold, and protected by silence. When the first peat cutters in Denmark unearthed the leathery face of a man in 1950, they thought they had found a recent murder victim. The police were called, the area was sealed off, and investigators arrived to examine the body. But what they discovered instead was something far stranger, a man who had been dead for over 2,000 years, his eyelashes still intact, his lips still curved in a quiet, eternal calm. This was the Tollund man, and with him began one of the most haunting mysteries in archaeology, the phenomenon of the bog bodies. Across northern Europe, from the windswept wetlands of Ireland to the silent bogs of Germany and the Netherlands, more than 1,000 such bodies have been discovered. They are not skeletons, but whole people. Men, women, even children preserved with such astonishing detail that their faces seem to sleep rather than decay. Their skin, darkened by the acids of the peat, still bears wrinkles, pores, and the marks of ropes and blades. Some have fingernails. Others have the expression of terror or serenity frozen on their faces. How could they have survived the centuries so perfectly, and more importantly, who were they? Do you think the people found in the bogs were punished victims or chosen ones for a sacred ritual? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know which theory you believe in more. The bogs of northern Europe are cold, acidic, and oxygen-poor, the perfect natural vaults for organic matter. When a human body sinks into the wet peat, the bacteria that normally cause decay cannot survive. Tannins, the same compounds that preserve leather, soak into the flesh and turn the skin into a dark, supple material. The bones, however, dissolve, leaving behind hollow faces and boneless hands that seem both human and alien. In this way, time is stopped. Scientists examining Tollund man found that his stomach still contained the remains of his last meal, a porridge of barley, linseed, and wild seeds. It was the breakfast of an Iron Age farmer, ordinary, humble, but perfectly preserved in his gut for 20 centuries. Radiocarbon dating placed his death around 400 BCE, during a time when Celtic tribes ruled the lands, and ritual sacrifice was a part of spiritual life. But this brings us to the deeper question: was Tollund man a criminal executed for his crimes, or a chosen offering to the gods? Many bog bodies show the signs of violent death. They were hanged, stabbed, strangled, or struck on the head. Some were even killed more than once, the so-called triple death: first strangled, then stabbed, and finally drowned. To modern eyes, this seems horrific. But to Iron Age cultures, such a sequence might have been sacred. The Grobal man, discovered in Denmark in 1952, had his throat slit from ear to ear. His face, eerily peaceful, looked as though he might wake at any moment. His body was placed gently in the bog, without any signs of haste or disrespect. Others, like Lindo man from England, bore garlands or ritual bands, suggesting deliberate preparation. Archaeologists believe these were sacrificial victims offered to appease deities of fertility or harvest gifts to the earth itself. And yet not all stories fit this mold. Some bodies show signs of punishment, hands-bound skulls crushed as if they had been executed, not honored. Could the bogs have been ancient execution grounds rather than temples, or were they both places where life and death merged in ceremony? Standing before Tolland Man today, preserved behind glass, in Silkeborg Museum, one is struck not by horror, but by intimacy. His closed eyes and soft mouth suggest sleep, not death. His face feels timeless, an echo of humanity that has survived longer than any kingdom or empire. Visitors often report feeling as though he might breathe again at any moment. These faces are windows into the past, but also mirrors reflecting our own questions about mortality and belief. The people who placed them in the bogs clearly treated the act with purpose. Their bodies were not buried haphazardly. They were arranged, sometimes curled, as if in fetal position, sometimes wrapped in cloaks or caps. Everything points to intent, but intent toward what that remains the central enigma. This is the core of the mystery, the question that no analysis, no DNA sample, no isotope test has yet fully answered. The bogs preserved their flesh, but not their stories. Were these people revered priests, condemned traitors, or chosen sacrifices to ancient gods? One theory suggests that these individuals were ritual emissaries, mediators between humans and the divine. Iron Age societies often saw bogs as gateways to the spirit world, places between land and water, life and death. Sacrifice there might have symbolized a passage and offering, carried into the earth to restore balance or secure favor. The serene face of Tolland Man, his carefully closed eyes and neatly positioned body seems to support this. But other evidence points elsewhere. Chemical analysis of certain bodies, such as YDE, girl from the Netherlands, reveals traces of malnutrition and disease. She was young, around 16, and found with a woolen band around her neck, strangled. Her hair had been cut on one side, a sign of punishment or disgrace in ancient Germanic custom. Was she a scapegoat, executed to protect her community from misfortune? In Ireland, where many bog bodies have been discovered near tribal boundaries, researchers propose another explanation, that these individuals were kings or nobles ritually killed when their reigns failed, a symbolic renewal of the land through royal sacrifice. In these cultures, the ruler's health reflected that of the soil. If the crops failed, the king might have to die to cleanse the land. Each theory opens more questions than it answers. For every Tolland man with a peaceful expression, there is a Graubaal man with a throat cut wide, or a Windaby girl buried with a cloth over her face. These are not random deaths, but they are not all the same. They belong to a network of beliefs and fears that no written record survived to explain. And so, thousands of years later, we stand before their preserved forms and ask who chose them, who tied the ropes, who whispered the last words before the peat closed above their heads. Modern technology continues to unlock fragments of their secrets. CT scans reveal hidden wounds. Isotope studies trace their childhoods to faraway lands, suggesting they were travelers or captives. Some ate exotic foods before death, indicating a ritual feast. Others bore manicured nails and smooth skin, signs of high social status. Yet others were scarred and emaciated, perhaps slaves or outcasts. What unites them all is the paradox of reverence and violence, the intertwining of death and devotion. The bog did not merely preserve their flesh, it preserved the moment of their submission to forces greater than themselves. Even now, archaeologists debate whether these deaths were acts of cruelty or worship. The truth may lie somewhere in between, a reflection of an ancient worldview where sacrifice was not murder, but transformation, and where the boundary between the human and the divine was crossed through blood, water, and soil. Over the centuries, more bodies have been found. Some curled in fetal positions, others stretched flat, as if floating. Each discovery revives the same haunting questions, yet the bogs keep their silence. They have swallowed entire histories, preserving only fragments, a hand, a braid of hair, a meal half digested, a noose twisted from animal sinew. In a way, the bogs are storytellers that refuse to speak plainly. They give us faces, but not names, gestures, but not meanings. Scientists can reconstruct the diet, the season of death, even the pollen grains in their lungs, but not the thoughts that led them into the peat. The mystery of the bog bodies endures because it touches something universal: the human attempt to give meaning to death. Whether as sacrifice, punishment, or ritual passage, each body was placed deliberately, and each has survived to remind us that even in death there can be life preserved, eternal waiting. The Tollan man and others now rest silently in museums, their faces unchanged since the Iron Age. Through glass, we look into eyes that once saw ancient skies. The bogs act as time machines, preserving both body and mystery. Beyond science, their silence speaks louder than any record, asking who they truly were: victims or believers, kings or slaves. Beneath the mist of northern Europe, they still sleep, eternal witnesses, guarding a forgotten faith. In the endless dryness of southern Peru, where not a single raindrop may fall for months, and where the sand stretches like a lifeless ocean, lies one of the strangest and most brilliant engineering enigmas of the ancient world, the Nazca Puquios. Seen from the sky, they resemble spirals carved into the earth like cosmic fingerprints, pressed into the desert floor. But these spirals are not symbols, nor art. They are the keys to survival in a place where life should not exist. And even now, more than 1,000 years after their creators vanished, no one can fully explain who designed them or how they knew precisely where to dig. Who do you think truly designed these mysterious spirals, the Nazca people, or an ancient source of knowledge we've yet to uncover? Share your thoughts in the comments below. For centuries, travelers and scientists stared in wonder at these strange corkscrew pits that descend deep into the sand. Each spiral leads to a tunnel, an underground channel carved through gravel and stone, still carrying water through the desert today. In a region where rainfall averages less than 4 millimeters per year, these ancient water systems turned barren ground into farmland, sustaining one of Peru's earliest civilizations, the Nazca people. But the question remains, how could a society that predated metal tools, compasses, or maps achieve such precision? The Nazca culture thrived between 200 BCE and 600 CE, long before the Inca Empire ever rose to power. They were artists, astronomers, and engineers, the same people who carved the Nazca lines, those enormous geoglyphs visible only from above. Yet the Puquios seem to belong to another level of sophistication altogether, a level that suggests an understanding of hydrology and aerodynamics far beyond what the ancient world should have known. Each Puquio consists of a spiral ramp descending into the earth, built from carefully stacked stones that resist erosion even after centuries of wind and sandstorms. These spirals connect to subterranean aqueducts, narrow channels that tap into underground aquifers. Some of these tunnels stretch for kilometers, precisely angled to maintain a continuous flow of water without pumps or modern mechanisms. But what truly astounds scientists is the design's functionality. The spirals do more than grant access. They pull wind into the tunnels, creating air pressure that pushes water along the channels. In other words, the Nazca built a self-ventilating hydraulic system, a sustainable network that still works in one of the driest places on Earth. It's hard to believe that such a complex system could have been built through trial and error. The terrain of the Nazca Desert is deceptive. Beneath the surface lie hard rocks, gravel beds, and unpredictable water tables. Modern hydrologists often rely on satellite imaging to map aquifers, yet the Nazca seem to have already known exactly where to dig over 500 years ago. How did they find the underground streams without modern instruments? Did they use the stars, the soil's color, or the behavior of animals as guides, or did they inherit this knowledge from a civilization, even older one, that vanished long before recorded history began? As researchers began to study the Puquios in detail, they discovered something even more extraordinary. Some of the tunnels are perfectly aligned with prevailing wind directions. This means the system not only moved water, but also controlled airflow, a kind of ancient air pump that harnessed the desert wind to sustain its own motion. When scientists modeled these spirals digitally, they realized the airflow inside could maintain steady movement, circulating cool air and preventing stagnation, a natural feat of engineering efficiency. For a civilization without written records or advanced tools, such a discovery feels almost impossible. Satellite imagery has since revealed that the Puquios form part of a vast interconnected web, dozens of spirals, channels, and reservoirs spread across miles of desert terrain. From above, they appear deliberate, symmetrical, and interconnected, as if following a grand design, a blueprint too sophisticated for chance. And yet no physical evidence of such a plan has ever been found. No carvings, no manuscripts, no clay tablets describe how or why they were built. All that remains are the spirals themselves, silent, enduring, and inexplicably functional. The mystery of the Puquios deepens because no written records, symbols, or oral traditions explain their creation. Some scholars believe the Nazca spent centuries observing nature, tracing how moisture darkened soil, or how rare plants grew above hidden springs, gradually building a map of the underground water veins. Others think they inherited techniques from earlier Andean peoples such as the Paracas or Tiwanaku, whose knowledge of stone and irrigation was legendary. Yet the extraordinary precision of the Puquios has led some to wonder whether this wisdom might come from a civilization erased by time, one that mastered environmental engineering long before recorded history. And in the realm of speculation, a few even whisper of guidance from beings beyond the earth. It's easy to dismiss such ideas, yet the mystery persists. How could the Nazca, isolated in one of the most unforgiving environments on the planet, create something so advanced that it still functions after a millennium, while many modern irrigation systems fail within decades? Even the Inca, whose empire stretched across mountains and jungles, never replicated the exact design of the Puquios. It appears to have been a unique achievement, a masterpiece of local innovation, or perhaps an inherited legacy from minds we no longer understand. Archaeologists who have walked among the spirals describe them as strangely hypnotic. The ramps wind downward like the shell of a snail, pulling you into the earth, into the whispering tunnels below, where cool air flows and trickling water still echoes. For the Nazca, this might not have been just an engineering feat, it may have held spiritual meaning. Water, after all, was the essence of life in a desert world. The spirals could have symbolized the path of life itself, descending into the depths where the sacred liquid flowed and rising again to the surface in renewal. In that sense, the Puquios were both practical and sacred, a perfect union of science and spirituality. Today, many of these structures remain intact, still channeling water to nearby villages. Local farmers continue to rely on the same tunnels that their ancestors used, proving that the Nazca's design was not merely symbolic, but astonishingly durable and efficient. Yet even with modern mapping and carbon dating, the question of authorship remains unanswered. The Nazca culture left behind pottery, textiles, and the famous geoglyphs, but nothing that explains how the Puquios were conceptualized or constructed. It's as if the blueprints were deliberately erased, leaving only the finished product as a riddle for future generations. Could it be that the knowledge was intentionally kept secret, passed orally among specialized builders, a kind of ancient guild of water engineers whose art died with them. Or perhaps the system's creation was a collective endeavor, guided by centuries of observation, trial, and sacred ritual. Either way, the Puquios stand as silent evidence of a forgotten genius, a message carved not in stone tablets but into the living earth itself. Even today, the Nazca spirals twist across the desert like a riddle carved in sand. Were they built by simple farmers, guided by intuition, or by minds that understood nature's laws long before modern science? Until we uncover a single clue, a plan, a record, a buried tunnel, the Puquios will remain what they are, a timeless masterpiece of survival and mystery, whispering through the forgotten spirals beneath our feet.
In the early afternoon of February 13, 1961, 3 amateur rock hunters were searching for geodes along the dry slopes of the Koso Mountains in California. The region, carved by ancient volcanic activity, was known for its strange rock formations and shimmering mineral pockets, a treasure trove for collectors. One of the hunters, Wallace Lane, picked up a round, fossilized stone that looked slightly different. It was heavier than usual, almost unnaturally symmetrical, and showed traces of something metallic glinting beneath its surface. They brought it back to their workshop, assuming they had found a rare geode filled with quartz or crystals. But when they sawed it open with a diamond blade, what emerged from the heart of the rock would ignite one of the strangest archaeological mysteries of the 20th century.
Inside, the solid concretion was not crystal or mineral, but a mechanical-looking object. At its center lay a cylindrical piece of metal surrounded by what appeared to be a ceramic or porcelain insulator, and enclosed within a rusted metallic shell. It looked almost identical to a modern spark plug, yet the rock that encased it seemed ancient, as though it had hardened over millennia. The team of finders, stunned and confused, sent the object for examination. Thus began the long and tangled story of what would later be called the Koso artifact, a riddle that blurred the lines between science, pseudoscience, and the boundaries of human history. What do you think about the Koso artifact? Just an old spark plug accidentally buried? Or a trace of a lost mysterious technology? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Geologists who saw photographs of the artifact noted that the outer material resembled a solid mass of sandstone or tufa formations that under normal conditions take hundreds of thousands of years to solidify. Some claimed the concretion might even belong to the Pleistocene era, long before humans invented anything remotely resembling an engine. Yet the inner structure was unmistakably artificial, a manufactured core, a symmetrical casing, and electrical insulation. How could such a modern object be embedded in geological material so ancient? When X-rays were taken of the artifact, the mystery deepened. The scans revealed a uniform metallic core with a precisely shaped tip and a geometric symmetry no natural process could produce. Some saw coiled components or internal mechanisms, all suggesting that the object had been engineered, not formed by chance. As word spread, the Koso artifact quickly attracted attention from both skeptics and believers in lost civilizations. Some enthusiasts proposed that it was an out-of-place artifact, a technological remnant left behind by an advanced prehistoric culture. Others speculated that it might be evidence of time travel, or even an extraterrestrial probe that had been buried for eons. More conservative geologists argued that natural concretions can form around modern objects much faster than commonly assumed, sometimes within decades, under the right chemical conditions. Yet even this explanation couldn't account for the artifact's extraordinary preservation, the uniformity of the stone matrix, or the way the metallic parts had aged differently from known examples of corrosion. In a time when UFO sightings and ancient astronaut theories were becoming pop culture fascinations, The Koso artifact became a symbol of scientific heresy, a piece of modern technology trapped in primordial rock. In 1969, two researchers, Pierre Stromberg and Paul Heinrich, re-examined the available photographs and reports. They concluded that the object was likely a champion spark plug, manufactured in the 1920s or 1930s. The mineral shell, they argued, wasn't ancient stone, but a rapidly formed concretion, a cement-like coating of iron oxide, clay, and sand that can develop in a matter of decades when metal and moisture interact underground. Their conclusion seemed reasonable, but there was one enormous problem: no one could test it. The original Koso artifact had vanished. By the late 1960s, the artifact was said to be in the possession of Wallace Lane, the man who had originally found it. But when researchers tried to contact him, they were told that he had moved away, taking the mysterious stone with him. Others claimed that Lane refused to show the artifact to anyone, saying it had drawn too much unwanted attention. After that, all trace of it disappeared. Only a handful of photographs, X-rays, and descriptions survived, scattered across old publications and private letters. Without the original specimen, no one could confirm whether it was truly a spark plug or something else entirely. The mystery, once open to scrutiny, became sealed forever in speculation. Some whispered that it had been confiscated, hidden away by collectors or government agencies unwilling to let a forbidden artifact challenge conventional history. Others suspected it was destroyed or deliberately concealed by those who wished to protect its secret. The truth, like the object itself, was gone. If the artifact was truly just a 1920s spark plug, why did its owners refuse to release it for study? Why did every trace of it vanish? Just as investigators grew interested, why, despite the supposedly mundane explanation, do the original photographs still show anomalies that no spark plug of that era quite matches? The story has an eerie symmetry. An object that shouldn't exist was discovered in stone, and when questioned, it slipped back into obscurity, as though reality itself had swallowed it once more. In some ways, the disappearance is what made the Koso artifact legendary. It became a ghost of archaeology, an idea more powerful than the object itself. Without the artifact to test, both skeptics and believers could claim victory. It became a mirror for whatever people wanted it to represent: proof of ancient technology or a cautionary tale about human gullibility. This is where the story transcends mere science. The most unsettling part of the Koso artifact is not what it looked like, but what happened after. Who placed that object inside the rock? Was it nature, a random concretion around a lost tool? Or was it something more deliberate? If the artifact truly dated back thousands or millions of years, then it implies an impossible scenario: someone or something with technological capability existed on Earth long before modern civilization. But even if it was modern, the fact that the object vanished before it could be definitively analyzed creates a vacuum of certainty, one that breeds endless speculation. Some researchers believe the artifact was intentionally hidden. They suggest that it might have been quietly taken by a private collector who realized its implications. Others imagine that it was destroyed to avoid embarrassment or controversy. A few go further, suggesting that it might have been seized by authorities who recognized that an out-of-place artifact could destabilize historical timelines. What makes the disappearance even stranger is the consistency of the silence. Not one credible photograph has surfaced since the 1960s. No museum claims to have seen it. No family member of the finders ever came forward. It simply ceased to exist, as though erased from history. Could it have been lost in a move, misplaced in storage? Possibly. Yet the artifact's almost mythic vanishing act has given it a second life, one of whispers, conspiracy, and wonder. In this way, its disappearance may be the final act of its mystery, transforming a single spark plug, if that's truly what it was, into an enigma that continues to defy closure. Today, the Koso artifact stands alongside other alleged O parts, the Antikythera mechanism, the Baghdad battery, the London hammer, each raising similar questions about the limits of human history. But unlike those artifacts, the Koso object cannot be revisited. It has become a legend, without evidence, a symbol of how easily mysteries can slip beyond reach. In that sense, the Koso artifact is more than an object. It's a reflection of human uncertainty. It reminds us how fragile our understanding of the past truly is. We dig, we analyze, we categorize, but sometimes all we uncover is the vastness of what we do not know. The Koso artifact appeared without warning, defied logic, and then vanished, leaving behind only photos, rumors, and one haunting question. Who put it there and who took it away? Whether it was just a spark plug trapped in clay or a trace of a forgotten age, its disappearance turned it from a curiosity into legend. Like a spark sealed in stone, it flickered once, then was gone, leaving humanity to wonder if we glimpsed the impossible or only the echo of our own imagination. In the quiet countryside of Aberdeenshire, Scotland stands a weathered block of stone that has defied the understanding of historians, linguists, and archaeologists for more than 2 centuries. It is known simply as the Newton Stone, a monument so ordinary in appearance, yet so impossibly strange in meaning that it has become one of the most enduring enigmas of ancient Europe. For all its silence, the stone speaks of something forgotten, a meeting point between civilizations, or perhaps a lone message carved by hands that belonged to no culture we recognize. It stands there unmoving, as if waiting for someone, anyone, to finally understand what it has been trying to say for nearly 2,000 years. Who do you believe carved the Newton Stone? A lost civilization, ancient travelers, or something else entirely? Share your theory in the comments below. Let's see how you would decode this mystery. Discovered in the early 19th century near the village of Newton House, the stone measures nearly 6 feet tall. Its surface bears 2 sets of inscriptions, and that is where the mystery begins. The first inscription is clearly Ogham, the ancient script of the Celtic peoples, once spread across Ireland and northern Britain. But just beneath it lies a second inscription, a line of unfamiliar symbols that no scholar has ever been able to identify. The characters seem to borrow forms from many worlds, some resembling Greek, others hinting at Phoenician, and still others that appear entirely alien. No one can say who carved them or even when. Carbon dating cannot help, as the stone itself offers no organic trace to measure. It stands timeless, its language frozen in a silence deeper than centuries. From the first moment of discovery, scholars have been divided. Was the Newton Stone a single work, the message of a traveler or priest who used 2 alphabets to preserve a sacred text? Or is it a coincidence, 2 inscriptions carved at different times by different peoples for unrelated purposes? The Ogham portion might be as old as the 5th century AD, belonging to the time when Celtic tribes and early Picts still ruled northern Scotland. But the second inscription, the one that truly stirs debate, could be far older, perhaps thousands of years older, hinting at a civilization whose identity has been erased from history. Many have tried to decode it. Some claimed it was Semitic, a lost dialect of ancient Phoenician or Hebrew. Others suggested Proto-Canaanite or even a form of early Greek. A few saw it as the script of a long-vanished European tribe. But each interpretation collapses under scrutiny. The letters do not align with any known syntax. Some symbols repeat in patterns too irregular for structured language. Others appear to be symbolic, almost ritualistic, perhaps not words at all, but a sacred code, a prayer, or a map written in symbols only the initiated could read. Even the orientation of the writing is disputed. Should it be read from left to right to left, or even vertically, like Ogham? Every theory leaves more questions than answers. No record tells who erected it, when, or for what purpose. It is not part of any known stone circle burial mound or ceremonial site. It simply exists, an isolated sentinel on the Scottish landscape with no clear ties to the world around it. The region of Aberdeenshire is rich in Pictish monuments, carved stones depicting beast warriors and abstract symbols. Yet the Newton stone does not fit into their artistic tradition. Its inscriptions are too linear, too foreign. If it truly were Pictish, why does it not share their recognizable symbols? And if not Pictish, then whose hand shaped it? During the Victorian era, when the stone first gained scholarly attention, theories multiplied wildly. Some insisted it proved contact between Scotland and the Phoenicians, the seafaring merchants of the Mediterranean, who might have reached the British Isles in search of tin long before Rome ever set foot there. If true, it would mean that travelers from Lebanon or the ancient Levant once stood on Scottish soil, carving their words into granite beneath northern skies. Others suggested it was the work of Jewish migrants fleeing persecution during antiquity, bringing their sacred tongue to this far land. There were even those who whispered of Atlanteans, lost colonists of a forgotten age, or missionaries who sought to spread an early monotheistic faith. None of these claims ever found proof, but each added another layer of fascination to the mystery. Standing before the Newton stone today, one cannot escape the feeling that it was meant to be read, meant to communicate something vital. Its characters are too deliberate, too neatly aligned to be mere decoration. Yet whatever message they carried has been lost to time, their meaning eroded not by weather, but by the collapse of memory itself. Some scholars propose that the stone may once have marked a sacred site, perhaps aligned with astronomical events or seasonal rituals. Others see in its symbols the remnants of a forgotten priesthood who combined local Ogham traditions with the esoteric scripts of travelers from faraway lands. And then there is a quieter, more haunting possibility that the inscription was carved by a single individual, a wanderer who came from elsewhere, leaving behind one final message in a tongue no one else could understand. This is the question that haunts every study of the stone. Who in this remote corner of northern Britain knew of scripts that resembled the alphabets of the ancient Mediterranean, who possessed both the tools and the knowledge to carve them with such precision? Could it have been an ancient trader who brought foreign letters to a new world, a missionary from the East who sought to leave a mark of faith, or perhaps a native craftsman who had glimpsed foreign symbols on imported goods and imitated them without knowing their meaning? Each theory is compelling, yet none can stand alone. The possibility that truly unsettles historians is the one that defies all logic, that the Newton stone was carved by a culture we have never discovered, a people whose language and memory have been completely erased from the archaeological record. If so, this single stone might be the only surviving trace of their existence. It is this idea that a whole civilization could vanish, leaving behind nothing but a single undeciphered message that gives the Newton stone its enduring power. Today, the Newton stone stands under protective care, its surface slowly fading under centuries of wind and rain. Modern imaging techniques, laser scans, 3D photogrammetry, spectral analysis have all been applied, yet none can translate what is carved there. The more we study it, the more it resists. Like an ancient riddle carved in stone, it seems almost designed to outlast understanding. Perhaps that was its purpose all along, not to be read, but to remind us of how much we have forgotten. Some modern archaeologists suggest that the unknown inscription may be pseudo-script, a decorative imitation of writing with no linguistic content. Yet even this explanation fails to satisfy. The strokes are too deliberate, too careful, and too consistent to be mere artistic flourish. The Newton stone has endured wars, religious reformations, and the relentless erosion of time. Still it stands a mute witness to a Scotland that once lay at the crossroads of myth and history. In a land of mist and stone circles, it is easy to imagine the Newton stone as a marker between worlds, a signpost left by travelers whose names we will never know. Perhaps they wanted to be remembered. Perhaps they wanted to warn us. Or perhaps the meaning was never meant for us at all. Every generation that studies the stone adds another layer of interpretation, but none can claim certainty. And so it remains a mystery carved in granite, older than our languages, older than our certainty. Who carved the Newton stone? A Celtic priest calling lost gods, a Phoenician trader marking his voyage, or a forgotten people leaving behind their final message? No one truly knows. But on a lonely field in Scotland, those silent carvings still watch us through time, reminders of voices long gone, of meanings once known. Until the day they are understood, the Newton stone will remain a symbol of the silence between civilizations. When workers in Chengdu, Sichuan province began digging the foundations for a construction project in 2001, they could never have imagined that their shovels would strike one of the greatest archaeological mysteries of modern China. Buried beneath layers of quiet soil lay the remains of a long-forgotten civilization, a dazzling city of gold, ivory, and bronze, lost for nearly 3,000 years. The place would come to be known as the Jinsha site, and from the moment it was uncovered, it began rewriting everything historians thought they knew about ancient China's southwest. At first glance, Jinsha appeared to be an echo of Sangxingdui, another enigmatic site discovered decades earlier in the same Sichuan basin. Both were filled with strange, almost alien artifacts, enormous bronze masks with bulging eyes, intricate ivory carvings, and thin sheets of pure gold etched with divine symbols. But what shocked archaeologists was not only the beauty of these treasures, but the realization that this was not a random deposit of offerings. It was the center of a sophisticated city, once thriving, with artisans, priests, and rulers whose names and stories have been completely erased from history. If you discovered an ancient city filled with gold and ivory, yet no one knows who built it, what do you think really happened to the people of Jinsha? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Radiocarbon dating placed the site between 1200 and 650 BCE, around the same time Egypt's new kingdom collapsed, and the Trojan War echoed in Greek legend. In that era, deep within the fertile Chengdu plain, Jinsha was likely the political and religious heart of the ancient Shu kingdom, a civilization as mysterious as it was advanced. Excavations revealed city walls, large residential platforms, altars, workshops, and vast pits filled with ritual offerings. But it was the nature of those offerings that defied logic. Dozens of elephant tusks, arranged upright as though planted in the earth. Piles of deer antlers, burned animal bones, fragments of jade, turquoise, and bronze, and among them objects of extraordinary artistry, thin gold foils shaped like birds' tigers, and suns some no thicker than a sheet of paper. Among these, one artifact stood apart, a small circular gold foil, only 12.5 centimeters across, decorated with 12 radiating flames and 4 birds flying clockwise around a hollow center. This was the golden sunbird now, the official emblem of Chengdu city itself. To the Shu people, it may have symbolized the movement of the sun across the heavens, a vision of cosmic order and divine renewal. But to modern scholars, it represents something even greater proof of a forgotten cosmology, a worldview completely independent of early Chinese dynasties. The abundance of ivory in Jinsha puzzled scientists immediately. The Chengdu Plain is not home to elephants, not in historical times, not even in the late Holocene. So where did the Shu acquire them? Were they imported through long-distance trade, or did they signify something far more symbolic? Perhaps a connection to the mythical southern realms often described in ancient Chinese texts as the lands of the spirits. Archaeologists found signs of fire rituals, ivory tusks, half-burned animal bones deliberately broken and placed in patterns. Some believe the people of Jinsha practiced sacrificial ceremonies to appease gods of the earth and sky, using ivory as a conduit between worlds. In their mythology, elephants and birds may have represented the duality of heaven and earth, one rooted in the soil, the other soaring to the sun. Equally fascinating are the bronze masks and half-human, half-animal figurines scattered across the site. They echo the imagery of Sansingduai, suggesting that both cities shared a unified religious system, perhaps centered on a powerful solar deity or a divine ancestor who saw all things. The masks' exaggerated eyes, stretching horizontally as if to watch the horizon, could symbolize omniscience, a gaze that pierces both the mortal and spirit realms. Yet without written records, no one can say for sure. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, Jinsha was abandoned. Around 650 BCE, the rituals ceased. The altars fell silent. The people vanished. There are no traces of war, no signs of fire or catastrophe, only the stillness of a city deserted in peace. What could have caused such a sudden disappearance? Some researchers blame natural disasters, perhaps a great earthquake or the shifting of the Min River, which may have diverted the water supply and rendered the city uninhabitable. Others suspect political collapse or migration, perhaps as the ancient Shu kingdom fell under the expanding influence of the Zhou dynasty. But none of these explanations fully satisfy the evidence. The people didn't just die, they left everything behind, including sacred relics that no believer would abandon willingly. It's as though Jinsha was ritually sealed, its temples and treasures intentionally buried, its gods left to sleep beneath the earth. That deliberate silence, more than any flood or famine, suggests a civilization that chose disappearance as an act of faith. And here lies the greatest mystery: who built Jinsha, who prayed to its gods. They possessed the ability to refine gold with impossible precision, sheets as thin as modern foil, crafted without iron tools. They understood astronomical cycles, the symbolism of the sun, and the movement of birds, and they expressed their theology in metals, jade and ivory, rather than words. They organized massive ritual events with hundreds of participants and thousands of artifacts arranged in geometric perfection. This was no primitive tribe, it was a theocracy, a kingdom, guided by a priestly elite that wielded spiritual and political power intertwined. Yet no written language has been discovered. No royal tombs, no inscriptions, no names, not a single record survives to tell who their kings were or what they called themselves. For a culture that produced such grandeur, its silence is deafening. Some scholars propose that the Jinsha people were the direct descendants of Sansingduai migrating to Chengdu after a natural disaster destroyed their earlier city. If true, Jinsha would represent the last flourishing of the Shu civilization, the final breath of an empire that once stood outside the Chinese heartland, yet rivaled it in sophistication. But even this theory leaves questions. Why did both Sansingduai and Jinsha vanish in the same pattern: a sudden rise, a mysterious decline, and total erasure from history? Could these cities have been connected to a larger lost cultural network, one that extended beyond Sichuan into regions now buried under millennia of change? Or was Jinsha merely one node in a cycle of spiritual migrations where the people moved as their gods commanded. Standing in the Jinsha Museum, where the golden glow of treasures preserved for 3,000 years still quietly shines, one can feel the silence of a vanished civilization. Every piece of gold, every ivory tusk, every charred bone seems to tell the story of a people who lived not merely to survive, but to worship something greater than themselves. Their world once moved in harmony with the rhythm of the sun, the birds, the sky, and the earth, until that rhythm suddenly ceased. They left, leaving their gods beneath the soil. And even now the question still echoes, who built Jinsha, and why did they disappear? Jinsha remains a riddle of gold and earth. Its treasures prove that a magnificent civilization once thrived in Sichuan, yet left behind no names, no voices, only the golden glow of a vanished sun. Perhaps time erased them, or perhaps they chose to disappear, taking their secrets with them. Who built this place, and why did they vanish without a trace? Jinsha still lies there, a silent city beneath the ground, a golden whisper from the ancient gods. Across the windswept volcanic landscapes of the Canary Islands, where black basalt cliffs plunge into the Atlantic and clouds drift low over dormant craters, stand mysterious stone formations that have puzzled explorers, archaeologists, and historians for decades. These are the megalithic structures of the Canary Islands, massive stone arrangements, pyramid-like terraces, and platforms that bear a haunting resemblance to other ancient monuments across the world. Yet here on these isolated islands off the northwest coast of Africa, no one can say with certainty who built them, when, or why. At first glance, these structures might appear as random piles of volcanic rock, but upon closer inspection, patterns emerge: precise alignments, terrace levels, and geometric organization that defy the notion of coincidence. Many of these stones are cut and positioned with a level of craftsmanship far beyond what local farming tools could achieve, particularly if they were built by the indigenous Guanche people, as conventional history suggests. These megalithic sites, scattered across Tenerife, Gran Canaria, La Palma, and La Gomera, tell a silent story, one carved into volcanic stone and whispered by the ocean winds. Could the pyramids and megaliths of the Canary Islands be evidence of a forgotten civilization? Perhaps one that connected Africa, Europe, and the Americas long before recorded history. Share your thoughts in the comments below. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the Canary Islands during the 15th century, they encountered the Guanche people, a tall, fair-skinned population, living in caves and practicing mummification. The Spaniards, surprised by their customs and their isolation, wondered how such people came to inhabit islands hundreds of kilometers from the African coast. But even the Guanches themselves, when asked about the ancient stone formations dotting their land, said they had been there long before their ancestors. They did not claim ownership. They did not know who had built them. They have always been here, they said, since the time of the gods. This single phrase has haunted researchers ever since. If not the Guanche, then who? The traditional view holds that the Guanches, possibly descended from North African Berber tribes, arrived around 1000 BCE and built basic agricultural terraces. But that explanation fails to account for the astronomical precision and monumental planning evident in the stoneworks of Giza and Tenerife. Here, 6 pyramid-like structures made of black volcanic stone rise in terraces toward the sky, each aligned precisely with the setting sun on the summer solstice. At the moment of sunset, the sun sinks between the stepped platforms, creating an optical alignment that would have required advanced astronomical knowledge. Such alignment is not an accident. Across cultures, from the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of Teotihuacan, such precision reveals a deep understanding of the heavens, something one would not expect from an isolated island people without written language or navigational records. The pyramids of Giza, rediscovered in the 20th century, are perhaps the most striking examples of these ancient constructions. For centuries, locals dismissed them as agricultural piles, stones cleared from fields by farmers. But in the 1990s, Norwegian explorer Thor Heyerdahl, famed for his Kon-Tiki expedition, visited Tenerife and was astonished by what he saw. The pyramids, he argued, shared uncanny similarities with pre-Columbian structures in Peru and Mexico. Their stepped designs, precise orientation, and construction technique suggested something far more deliberate, perhaps even trans-oceanic contact in prehistoric times. Heyerdahl proposed that the Canary Islands could have been a stopping point between Africa, the Americas, and the Mediterranean, used by ancient seafarers long before Columbus. His controversial theory reignited debate about early oceanic crossings, whether ancient civilizations, thought to be isolated, might have exchanged knowledge, culture, and even architectural design. Still, the question remains unanswered. How could such contact occur thousands of years ago, when no known maritime technology existed capable of crossing the Atlantic? Researchers studying the megalithic alignments on La Palma and Tenerife have found patterns that align with solar and lunar cycles, particularly during solstices and equinoxes. Some stone circles and platforms point directly toward the rising sun of midsummer, while others align with the moon's northernmost rise, phenomena that would have required years, if not generations, of careful observation. If these alignments are intentional, then their builders were astronomers and mathematicians, not simple island farmers. Yet curiously, no written record, no measuring tools, and no metal instruments have been found to support the existence of such an advanced culture. It is as if an entire civilization, one capable of aligning stone with the heavens, had simply vanished, leaving behind only stone and silence. Some scholars suggest that these monuments could belong to an unknown pre-Guanche civilization, possibly dating back thousands of years earlier. The island's volcanic nature means that many sites may still be buried beneath lava flows from ancient eruptions, erasing traces of their builders. Others see parallels between the Canary megaliths and the structures of North Africa, particularly the Libyan desert tombs and Algerian stone circles, suggesting that the builders may have come from the continent long before recorded migrations. There are also fringe theories that these islands were once part of a lost Atlantic culture, perhaps even remnants of Atlantis described by Plato. While mainstream archaeology dismisses such notions, the Canary Islands do lie near the geographical location Plato described just beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar. Their ancient stone structures, mysterious origins, and sudden cultural disappearance fit eerily well with the legend of a drowned civilization whose knowledge was lost to time. From an engineering standpoint, the megalithic structures present another riddle. The stones, mostly dense volcanic basalt, are cut and fitted without mortar, locked together through gravity and precision. Many walls remain standing after centuries of wind and rain, a testament to their builders' understanding of material strength and geometry. No tool marks are visible. No iron or bronze chisels have been discovered nearby. How then were these heavy stones shaped and lifted? It is a question that echoes through other megalithic sites worldwide, from Sacsayhuaman in Peru to Baalbek in Lebanon, where the same mystery persists, techniques beyond the apparent capabilities of their age. The Guanche left behind no written language, only oral traditions. Their myths speak of ancestral deities descending from the sky, of sacred mountains and solar rituals, and of places of power built by the first people. Could these myths preserve fragments of memory from a time before their own arrival, when another race, perhaps more advanced, shaped the island's stones? Spanish chroniclers of the 16th century described the Guanche as astonished by the mention of Christianity, yet already believing in a single sky god and the immortality of the soul. Such philosophical ideas, combined with their embalming techniques, suggest an echo of Egyptian influence, another tantalizing link across the ancient world. This is the heart of the mystery, and the reason the Canary megaliths remain one of the most perplexing archaeological enigmas on Earth. No definitive radiocarbon dating has been achieved. No inscriptions name the builders. No bones or artifacts connect them to known cultures. They simply exist in silent defiance of our historical timeline. Were they constructed by early Berber settlers with lost astronomical knowledge by a vanished Atlantic people predating recorded history? Or perhaps by the Guanche themselves, inheriting techniques from an unknown contact across the sea? Every theory opens a new door, and yet none fits perfectly. The island's isolation, the architectural precision, and the absence of continuity all point towards something beyond ordinary human migration. Today, the pyramids of Giza are preserved as a cultural park, attracting tourists and researchers alike. Under the glow of sunset, few realize the depth of the mystery they conceal. The Canary Islands remain a crossroads of continents, oceans, and legends, where time itself seems fractured. Beneath the volcanic soil may still lie secrets powerful enough to rewrite human history. Until they are uncovered, these stones will remain silent witnesses of a vanished world. High in the windswept plains of the Bolivian Altiplano at over 3,800 meters above sea level lies a ruin that defies time logic and technology. It is called Pumapunku, a name that means the door of the puma in the Aymara language. Today it looks like nothing more than a scattering of immense stone blocks across a barren plateau near the ancient city of Tiwanaku. But for those who have stood among its fallen monuments, the feeling is unmistakable. This place once held something extraordinary, something that modern engineers can barely replicate, and archaeologists still cannot fully explain. What do you think really happened at Pumapunku? A natural disaster, lost technology, or something beyond our understanding? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your theory. Pumapunku's most striking feature is not its scale alone, but the precision of its craftsmanship. The surviving blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, are cut with such perfect right angles, flatness, and symmetry that they seem to have been carved by laser rather than by hand. The stone itself is andesite and diorite, among the hardest materials on Earth, almost impossible to shape without advanced tools. Yet each block bears fine grooves, interlocking joints, and perfectly cylindrical drill holes that match no known tool of the ancient world. There are no chiseling marks, no uneven edges, just an eerie geometric perfection, as though the stone was once soft-molded like clay and then hardened again. The famous H-shaped blocks of Pumapunku are perhaps the most recognizable. Each one is identical to the others, carved with inner recesses, slots, and protrusions that allow them to fit together like puzzle pieces, a kind of modular architecture thousands of years before modern industry. Archaeologists have measured their angles to within fractions of a degree and found them consistent across multiple stones. How could such precision be achieved without iron, steel, or even a simple wheel? The Tiwanaku people, to whom the site is often attributed, left no record of advanced tools or technology. Yet here, in the heart of the Andes, stands evidence of an engineering language lost to time. But perhaps the most haunting mystery of all is not how Pumapunku was built, but how it was destroyed. Today, the site is a field of scattered megaliths, toppled and fragmented as if some immense explosion tore the complex apart. Archaeologists describe it as though the entire structure had been blown apart by a cataclysmic force. Massive blocks weighing dozens of tons lie upside down, cracked cleanly through the middle, hurled meters away from their foundations. Some show signs of shattering from internal pressure, not from weathering or slow collapse. No earthquake, no storm, no normal geological process can easily explain this. The destruction appears instantaneous and violent, as if energy was released from within the stones themselves. One theory suggests a powerful seismic event struck the region, but the pattern of debris with blocks strewn outward in radial directions challenges that explanation. Others propose a flood or an ancient landslide, yet the site sits on stable high ground, untouched by any known glacial or river erosion. Local Aymara legends tell of a time when the gods descended from the sky, bringing with them the knowledge to move mountains. Some stories describe a blinding flash that shattered the temples of the old world, leaving only silence and ruins behind. Could these tales be distant echoes of a real catastrophe, perhaps a meteor impact, a volcanic eruption, or something even stranger? Modern researchers have even speculated about electrical or energetic events, suggesting that if the stone contained certain minerals, a sudden magnetic discharge might have fractured it from within. Others, more speculative, still have proposed technological disasters, an experiment gone wrong, or the collapse of some forgotten power source that once animated the site. Yet despite centuries of excavation, no one has found definitive evidence of fire warfare or tectonic fault lines capable of producing such destruction. The stones simply lie where they fell, as if frozen in mid-collapse, untouched for thousands of years. This aura of devastation adds to Pumapunku's unsettling beauty. It feels less like an ancient ruin and more like the aftermath of something that should not have been possible. Visitors often describe the site as if time itself stopped here, as if the earth paused to preserve the moment of collapse. And in that stillness, the stones whisper their story, though no one can yet decipher their words. The mystery deepens when one considers how those massive blocks arrived here at all. Geological analysis shows that the nearest quarry lies over 10 kilometers away across rugged terrain, with no evidence of ancient roads or transport systems. The Tiwanaku people did not have wheels nor beasts of burden capable of hauling hundreds of tons, and yet somehow they moved the stones across valleys, up slopes, and into precise alignment. Some archaeologists propose the use of ropes, rollers, and manpower, but the sheer weight and volume make this implausible. Each block would have required hundreds, if not thousands of men working in perfect coordination, using techniques that left no trace. Others believe they may have exploited buoyancy on temporary canals or marshes, a fascinating but unverified hypothesis. Still, the enigma of the destruction overshadows even the miracle of construction. For even if the people of Tiwanaku somehow built Pumapunku, what force could have undone it so completely? Some claim that it was deliberate, that the builders themselves dismantled or deactivated the complex, perhaps after a catastrophe or ritual event. Others see evidence of a cosmic disaster, pointing to legends of great floods and heavenly fire that devastated early civilizations around the world. Curiously, the orientation of certain fallen blocks and fragments aligns with magnetic anomalies detected in the surrounding area, subtle but intriguing correlations that have led some researchers to wonder if an electromagnetic phenomenon might once have affected the site. These theories remain speculative, yet they reveal the depth of the mystery. Pumapunku does not behave like a normal ruin. As centuries passed, wind and erosion covered the once great structure in soil and silence. Only in the 19th century did explorers begin to unearth the stones again, astonished by their size and precision. Even modern engineers using 3D scans and digital modeling admit that recreating Pumapunku's interlocking architecture with hand tools would be nearly impossible. Some have compared it to a prehistoric version of industrial machining, a kind of Stone Age precision manufacturing that seems far too advanced for its supposed age. If it was indeed built around 501,000 CE by the Tiwanaku civilization, then it stands as one of the greatest achievements of human ingenuity. But if, as some fringe researchers argue, it is far older, perhaps a remnant of a civilization lost before recorded history, then Pumapunku may be the strongest evidence yet that humanity's technological timeline is incomplete. The site's very name, the door of the Puma, evokes a gateway, perhaps not only in stone, but in understanding. It may be a doorway into a forgotten chapter of human history, a time when the boundaries between myth and science blurred. The scattered stones could be the fossilized remains of an age when knowledge, mechanical, astronomical, or even energetic, was more advanced than we dare to believe. Archaeologists continue to study the site with satellite mapping, geophysical scanning, and high-resolution modeling, yet each discovery only raises more questions. Beneath the surface, traces of foundations and buried structures suggest that what we see is just the upper layer of something larger, perhaps a multi-tiered complex that extended underground. Standing amid the ruins today, one cannot help but feel the weight of silence. The air is thin, the wind relentless, and the stones, broken but proud, seem to gaze back at us from across the millennia. Their faces, carved with mathematical precision, gleam under the sun, as if defying erosion itself. They are relics of a forgotten design, fragments of an intelligence that once reshaped mountains and then vanished, leaving behind only the question, what destroyed Pumapunku? Some say time and nature. Others whisper of gods and machines. But the truth buried beneath centuries of dust remains untold. Until that mystery is solved, Pumapunku will remain one of the greatest enigmas of the ancient world, a monument not only to what was built, but to what was lost. It is a reminder that history is not a straight line of progress, but a cycle of creation and destruction, brilliance and silence. And perhaps beneath its shattered stones lies not just a ruin, but a warning that even the mightiest works of humankind, or of something beyond humankind, can vanish in an instant. It once stood as the beacon of an entire civilization, a monument so vast and audacious that ancient travelers described it as if it were alive, towering above the sea and glowing beneath the Greek sun. The Colossus of Rhodes, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was not merely a statue, it was a declaration of defiance, a symbol of human triumph after war, and a masterpiece of engineering that even today challenges our understanding of what the ancients were capable of. When the people of Rhodes repelled the siege of King Demetrius in 305 BC, they did something extraordinary. They melted down the abandoned weapons and armor of the defeated army, bronze, iron, and war machines, and used them to forge the image of their patron deity, Helios, the sun god. The very tools of destruction became the materials of glory. It took over 12 years to complete, from 294 to 282 BC, under the supervision of the sculptor Chares of Lindos, a student of the great Lysippus. What emerged at the end was not just a statue, it was an act of resurrection for a people who refused to bow. If you could travel back to the ancient world, how do you think the statue truly looked? A giant standing beside the sea, or a god stretching his legs across the harbor? As legend tells, share your thoughts in the comments below. Standing at an estimated 33 meters high and resting on a 15-meter marble base, the Colossus was likely the tallest bronze statue ever constructed in antiquity. It was said that sailors approaching the island could see the reflection of Helios shining from miles away, a spectacle that must have felt divine. The city of Rhodes, already a wealthy maritime power, placed the statue at the entrance to its harbor, not merely as decoration, but as a guardian of the seas, a message to all who dared to challenge its freedom. Here stands the light of Helios, protector of Rhodes. But the true wonder lay not only in its size, but in how it was built. The Greeks of the 3rd century BC had no cranes capable of lifting such weights, no scaffolding like those used by the Romans centuries later. Theories suggest that engineers constructed the statue from the ground up, using an earthen ramp that encased the rising figure. As the work advanced, layers of earth were piled higher, allowing workers to continue upward without falling. When the final bronze plates were placed and the statue completed, the ramp was removed, revealing the shining god to the world. Even with this explanation, questions remain. The precision, the internal framework, and the balance of weight required to keep such a figure stable were all far beyond what historians believed possible for that era. Some scholars even propose that the inner skeleton was made of iron beams filled with stones to stabilize it, an idea that would predate large-scale metal frameworks by nearly 2 millennia. Yet the most famous image of the Colossus, the one etched into the imagination of generations, is the Helios who straddled the harbor legs apart, allowing ships to pass beneath his feet as they entered the port of Mandrake. Painters of the Renaissance, inspired by texts long since misinterpreted, depicted him standing like a gate of the sun, a living bridge between land and sea. It is an image so powerful that it became inseparable from the legend. But was it ever true? Could a statue of such massive proportions, built more than 2,000 years ago, really have stood with its legs apart over the water? Most modern engineers say no. A bronze figure of that height, standing on 2 separated bases, would have collapsed under its own weight. The strain on the metal at the knees alone would have been catastrophic. Ancient Greek technology, though brilliant, was not yet capable of distributing that kind of load without advanced internal supports. There are no archaeological traces of twin foundations on opposite sides of the harbor, no remnants of stone piers strong enough to bear such a structure. The truth, however, may be more subtle and perhaps even more fascinating. Many ancient texts never explicitly described the Colossus straddling the harbor. Instead, they spoke of a statue guarding the harbor, which may simply have meant that it stood beside it, not over it. The confusion likely arose centuries later when poets and travelers reimagined its position in grander terms. The idea of a god spanning the sea, welcoming ships beneath him, was too magnificent for storytellers to resist. Still, not all scholars dismiss the possibility entirely. A few argue that the Greeks might have used ingenious counterweights and hollow construction, allowing for some version of a wide-legged stance, perhaps not directly over the water but across a narrow inlet or dock. Without physical remains, though, this theory remains in the realm of speculation. What's certain is that the image of Helios straddling the sea has outlived the stone and bronze that once formed him. It became a metaphor of protection, an embodiment of how Rhodes saw itself standing between the chaos of the ocean and the safety of civilization. Whether the statue ever truly took that shape is less important than what it represented: the human desire to make gods tangible, to turn faith into form. In 226 BC, just 56 years after its completion, a devastating earthquake struck Rhodes. The mighty Colossus broke at the knees and crashed to the ground. Ancient accounts tell that even in ruin, the sight of the fallen god was awe-inspiring. The historian Pliny the Elder wrote that few men could wrap their arms around the thumb of the statue, and that its fingers lay scattered like boulders across the harbor. When the people of Rhodes sought to rebuild it, the Oracle of Delphi warned them not to that Helios himself did not wish to rise again. Obedient to the divine word, the Rhodians left the remains untouched. For nearly 9 centuries, travelers visited the island just to gaze upon the ruins of the fallen wonder. Then in 654 AD, Arab forces who captured Rhodes supposedly sold the broken bronze to merchants from Syria who carted it away on the backs of 900 camels. Thus, the great Colossus disappeared from history. The exact site where the Colossus once stood has never been conclusively identified. Some archaeologists believe it was erected near the entrance to Mandrake Harbor, where today 2 bronze deer statues mark the spot. Others think it stood further inland, perhaps near the Temple of Helios, as a religious monument rather than a maritime one. Modern surveys of the seabed have uncovered blocks of ancient stone and traces of metal corrosion, possible remnants of the statue's pedestal, but none have yielded definitive proof. This uncertainty adds another layer to the enigma. Was the Colossus a coastal guardian or a sacred idol overlooking the city? Was it an architectural marvel beyond our understanding, or a symbol exaggerated by centuries of storytelling? Even in its absence, the Colossus of Rhodes never truly vanished. It became a symbol of light and resilience, inspiring artists and nations alike. The Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor, designed 2,000 years later, was directly modeled on the legend of Helios, standing as a new colossus, welcoming ships to freedom. In fiction too, the idea survived, from the Titan of Braavos in Game of Thrones to countless depictions in modern media. The vision of a god spanning the sea remains immortal. The Colossus was, in essence, a mirror reflecting not only the light of the sun, but the boundless ambition of humankind. And yet the mystery remains, the one question that refuses to die. Did the Colossus of Rhodes truly stand astride the harbor? Perhaps it never did. Perhaps the image of ships passing between the legs of a god was only ever a dream, a metaphor of divine protection that grew grander with each retelling. But perhaps, just perhaps, there was a moment long ago when the morning sun rose over the Aegean and sailors looked up to see Helios himself, straddling the sea, his face aflame with light. Until we uncover the true foundations beneath Rhodes, we may never know. But that uncertainty, that eternal question, is what keeps the Colossus alive. It was no larger than a fingernail, a sliver of silver, weathered by nearly 1,000 years of time. Yet that tiny object would shake the foundations of North American archaeology. In 1957, an amateur archaeologist named Guy Melgren unearthed something completely impossible: a Viking coin buried in the soil of Brooklyn, Maine, thousands of kilometers away from the nearest known Norse site. To this day, that single coin, known as the Maine penny or the Goddard coin, remains one of the most enduring archaeological mysteries ever found on American soil. Was this the fingerprint of a Viking explorer lost to time, or a coincidence born from centuries of trade and mystery? Share your thoughts below, and let the mystery of the Maine penny live on. When Melgren first discovered the coin at a Native American settlement called the Goddard site, he didn't realize its significance. The site was littered with thousands of ancient artifacts, pottery, stone tools, animal bones, all clearly belonging to the Penobscot people, who had lived there between AD 1180 and 1300. It seemed a typical dig, until that coin appeared. It was round silver and unlike anything ever found in a Native American site. Years later, experts identified it as a Norwegian silver penny from the reign of King Olaf Kyrre, who ruled between 1065 and 1080 AD, nearly 200 years earlier than the rest of the site's artifacts. That meant the coin was Viking Age, minted in Scandinavia, a continent and culture supposedly separated from Maine by an entire ocean and several centuries. The first question that every archaeologist asked was obvious: could it be fake? The answer, after rigorous metallurgical and stylistic analysis by the University of Oslo and the Smithsonian Institution was known the coin's silver composition strike marks and wear patterns perfectly matched authentic 11th century Norwegian coins. It was beyond doubt real, and that's what made it so disturbing. Because if the coin was real, then somehow it had crossed the Atlantic and found its way to a Native American village in Maine, centuries before Columbus or even John Cabot. History tells us that Viking explorers such as Leif Erikson reached Vinland, now believed to be Newfoundland, Canada, around 1000 AD. Archaeological remains at Lars O Meadows confirm a small settlement of Norse builders, traders, and explorers there. But Vinland is over 1000 kilometers from Maine, and no other Norse artifacts have ever been found farther south. According to conventional archaeology, the Vikings never came that far. They turned back after Vinland, their colonies failed, and their explorations ended. So how could a coin from medieval Norway find its way into the hands of a Native American in coastal New England? Over the decades, scholars and skeptics have proposed countless theories, each attempting to explain this seemingly impossible discovery. Some believe it was the result of direct contact with the Vikings, that Norse explorers may have traveled far beyond any record ever suggested venturing past Newfoundland and reaching deep into Maine. They might have met, traded, or interacted with coastal native tribes such as the Penobscot, and in doing so, left behind the small silver coin as the only surviving trace of that fleeting encounter. If true, this would rewrite the entire map of Viking exploration in the New World, proving that they journeyed farther and with greater courage than we have ever imagined. Another explanation suggests that the coin traveled through indigenous trade networks, a vast web of exchange stretching across North America, where tribes traded pearls, copper, obsidian, and other valuable materials over thousands of miles. Within that network, a single silver coin could have passed through many hands over generations, slowly moving from northern Newfoundland down to Maine, becoming a curious keepsake with a forgotten origin. Others suspect it might have been an accidental modern mix-up, that Melgren or someone before him unknowingly dropped a European coin, the kind commonly collected in the 19th and 20th centuries, and it was later unearthed, mistaken for an ancient relic. However, Melgren died before the coin's true identity as a Viking artifact was even confirmed, and no evidence of deceit has ever been found. Finally, a more romantic theory proposes that a Viking ship or a later Norse trade vessel may have wrecked off the coast of Maine, its cargo scattered and carried ashore by waves and time. Yet to this day, no trace of such a shipwreck has ever been discovered along the region's coast. Each theory seems to solve one piece of the puzzle only to open another, leaving the Maine penny suspended between history and legend, a relic caught forever between what we know and what we long to believe. The Goddard site itself deepens the enigma. Excavations revealed no other European artifacts. No metal tools, no glass beads, no fragments of armor or pottery, nothing except Native American material. The Maine penny stands alone, a single spark of foreign metal in a sea of indigenous history. How could a genuine Viking coin end up there without leaving any other trace of Norse presence? It's as if someone had taken a single page from a medieval Scandinavian chronicle and tucked it into a Native American storybook without any explanation. Beyond its physical form, the Maine penny has become a symbol of what archaeology struggles to explain: how stories, objects, and civilizations can intersect across time and space in ways no written record captures. If the coin truly arrived through ancient trade, it reveals that America's indigenous peoples had continental networks more complex than many realize. If it arrived through Viking explorers, it proves the Norse world reached farther and endured longer than the sagas ever mentioned. And if it arrived by chance, then it reminds us how fragile and unpredictable the record of the past really is. This is the question that continues to haunt researchers who truly brought the Maine penny to American soil. Every answer only leads to more questions. If a Viking did, who was he? A trader from Greenland wandering south along the Atlantic coast? A survivor of a forgotten expedition that perished in the cold waters off Maine? Or was it centuries later, perhaps a native traveler carrying the strange silver token as a prized ornament, unaware that it came from across the sea? The coin's silence is total. It offers no names, no stories, no clues beyond its own existence. Its very presence seems to defy history like a whisper from a version of the past that shouldn't exist. For decades, scientists have re-examined the soil samples, the stratigraphy of the dig, the exact layer where the coin was found. Everything seems consistent. The coin was there, buried with genuine artifacts of pre-Columbian Native Americans. It wasn't planted, it wasn't dropped recently, it simply was. Some even proposed that a small group of Norse traders may have briefly established an outpost somewhere along the New England coast, a lost settlement that vanished without trace, leaving behind only this single relic to testify to its fleeting existence. If that were true, the Maine penny would be the only surviving artifact of an entire forgotten chapter of exploration, proof that the Vikings did not just reach the edge of North America, but set foot deep within it. Others, however, insist that the coin's journey was entirely human, passed from hand to hand, generation to generation across lands and cultures, until it came to rest in the soil of a distant people. A relic not of conquest, but of connection, a bridge between worlds that never knew each other existed. Even today, the Maine penny sits quietly in the Maine State Museum, under a glass case illuminated by soft light. Tourists stop, lean in, and stare, and almost every one of them asks the same question: how did it get here? That question has no answer. No document mentions a Viking in Maine, no saga describes a voyage that far south, no artifact besides this one has been found in all of New England. And yet the coin exists. It is a paradox made of silver, a relic that rewrites the boundaries of the known world but refuses to explain itself. It is as though time itself misplaced it, a small tear in the fabric of history that will never fully mend. So who truly brought the Maine penny to Maine? Was it a voyager from the icy fjords of Norway whose story was swallowed by the Atlantic? Or was it time itself shifting, blending, carrying the echoes of distant worlds until they meet again? No one knows, and perhaps that is why the Maine penny continues to fascinate, because within its small, tarnished circle lies a riddle too vast for history to contain. There once stood on the shores of the Mediterranean a monument not of stone, but of knowledge, the Library of Alexandria. The greatest repository of wisdom in the ancient world was more than just a building. It was humanity's first attempt to collect all that was known, to hold in one place the memory of the earth itself. For centuries, it stood as the beating heart of civilization, where scholars from every corner of the known world gathered to study, debate, and dream. Founded around the 3rd century BCE under the rule of Ptolemy I or II, the library was part of a grand vision to make Alexandria the capital of not just Egypt, but of human intellect. Ships that entered its port were searched, and any scrolls found on board were copied. The originals kept, the copies returned. The goal was simple, yet godlike, in its ambition to possess every text ever written. Inside its marble halls and vast reading rooms, tens of thousands of papyrus scrolls whispered with the thoughts of centuries. There were works from Greece and Persia, Babylon and India, Egypt and Phoenicia, a tapestry of human genius bound in ink and fiber. It was said that more than 500,000 scrolls once lined its shelves, containing lost works of Aristotle, plays by Sophocles, unseen since antiquity, and scientific manuscripts describing machines' maps and stars that we can only imagine today. But the library was not just a storage of scrolls, it was alive. Within its walls lived thinkers, like Eratosthenes, who measured the Earth's circumference with nothing but shadows and geometry, Archimedes, who laid the foundations of physics, and Callimachus, who created the first known library catalogue. It was here that knowledge was not worshipped, but questioned, refined, and reborn. And then it vanished. No empire could conquer knowledge itself. Yet somehow, the Library of Alexandria was lost. The greatest treasure of the ancient world disappeared, not in a single night, but across centuries, consumed by wars, flames, and neglect. What makes its story so haunting is not only the loss of what it contained, but the mystery of how it was destroyed and by whom. Who do you believe truly destroyed the Library of Alexandria? Julius Caesar, the Christian mobs, the Caliph Omar, or humanity's own neglect? Share your thoughts below. In 48 BCE, during his military campaign in Egypt, Julius Caesar found himself trapped at the royal harbor of Alexandria. To block enemy access, he ordered the burning of all ships in the bay. No one could have predicted that this fire, born from a simple military command, would become the first great tragedy to strike human knowledge. Strong winds carried the flames back toward the city, scattering sparks that ignited nearby districts where warehouses stored thousands of papyrus scrolls destined for the Library of Alexandria. Ancient historians like Plutarch and Dio Cassius described how the fire turned the entire sky, crimson smoke rolling across the sea and spreading to the academic quarter. No one knows for sure whether the main library itself was consumed. Some say only the daughter library at the Serapeum was destroyed. But wherever the flames reached, tens of thousands of scrolls turned to ash, and the first wound was carved deep into the heart of human wisdom. When Alexandria fell under Roman rule, the entire city began to change. The age of free thought and intellectual pursuit slowly faded as Christianity became the official religion of the empire. Pagan temples, once sanctuaries of knowledge, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy, were now branded as symbols of heresy. The Serapeum Temple, a magnificent shrine dedicated to the god Serapis, and believed to have housed the remaining collections of the library, became the target of violent mobs. In 391 CE, under the decree of Emperor Theodosius I, Christian crowds stormed the temple, destroying it and burning what may have been the last remnants of Alexandrian scholarship. The tragedy reached its peak with the death of Hypatia, the last great philosopher and astronomer of the city. She was dragged through the streets, tortured and murdered by fanatics. Her death marked not just the end of a brilliant mind, but the collapse of reason and science themselves. When the light of knowledge was extinguished by the fire of blind faith, the world entered what history would later call the Dark Age of Wisdom. The third and most debated tale comes from the 7th century, during the Muslim conquest of Egypt. According to later Arab chroniclers, when Caliph Omar was asked what should be done with the remaining scrolls of Alexandria, he replied, "If what they contain agrees with the Quran, they are unnecessary. If they contradict it, they are dangerous. Burn them." And so they say, the scrolls were fed into the city's public baths as fuel, and for 6 months the fires burned with the words of ancient wisdom. Yet most modern historians doubt this account. The story appears only centuries after the supposed event, and may have been a legend meant to symbolize the passing of one age to another. But even legend, when it survives longer than truth, becomes its own kind of history. Each theory carries pieces of truth and myth. Caesar's fire, the Christian riots, the Caliph's decree, all may have played a part. But perhaps the greater tragedy is that the Library of Alexandria did not die in a single cataclysm. It faded piece by piece through neglect and the slow decay of civilization. When wars came, scrolls were looted. When rulers changed, scholars fled. When new faiths rose, old knowledge was silenced. By the time the Arab scholars arrived in Egypt, there may have been nothing left to burn. The library's destruction might not have been the work of one conqueror, but of humanity itself, each generation allowing a little more of its memory to vanish. In the ashes that remained of the Library of Alexandria may have lain secrets powerful enough to change the fate of humanity. Lost maps might have redrawn the world centuries before Columbus ever set sail. Ancient blueprints of mechanical devices could have ushered mankind into an industrial age 1,000 years earlier. Astronomical records observed by the naked eye, yet astonishingly precise, might have rewritten our entire understanding of the universe. And perhaps among those burned words once echoed the voices of civilizations, long-vanished fragments of Atlantis, Babylon, or worlds even older erased by time itself. The disappearance of the library was not merely a historical tragedy, it was a cosmic wound. Every scroll burned was not only the past reduced to ash, but also a future that was destroyed. Perhaps what we now call the Dark Ages was nothing more than the long shadow of that fateful night when humanity's greatest light went out. In 2002, on nearly the same ground where the ancient library once stood, Egypt built a new one, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina. Its circular design symbolizes the rising sun, a rebirth of knowledge, a promise that even if wisdom can burn, curiosity cannot die. Within its halls, millions of books now sit beside digital archives, exhibitions, and scientific research centers. It is not a reconstruction, but a resurrection of an idea that knowledge belongs to all. Yet the mystery lingers. Who truly destroyed the Library of Alexandria? Was it Caesar's ambition, the fanaticism of the early Christians, or the zeal of the caliphs? Or was it the slow erosion of human curiosity, the apathy of those who let knowledge decay in silence? Perhaps the truth is that the library was not destroyed by fire, but by forgetfulness. And perhaps that is the warning it leaves for us, that when we cease to protect wisdom, we become the very flames that consume it. In the quiet town of Homestead, Florida, stands one of the strangest and most haunting monuments in modern history, a fortress of stone, known as Coral Castle. It isn't massive like the pyramids of Giza, nor ancient like Stonehenge, yet it carries the same sense of enigma, the feeling that it should not exist. Built from more than 100 tons of solid coral rock, shaped, lifted, and aligned with precision, this castle defies every explanation of what one man should be capable of. Because Coral Castle was not the work of a construction crew nor of an engineering company. It was the work of a single man, a small, frail Latvian immigrant named Edward Leedskalnin. Do you think Edward Leedskalnin truly discovered a lost ancient secret of physics, or was he simply a genius driven by extraordinary will and love? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Edward arrived in America in the early 1920s. Heartbroken after being rejected by his fiancée in Latvia, a 16-year-old girl named Agnes Scuffs, whom he lovingly called Sweet 16. He never recovered from that heartbreak. Instead, he poured all his love, sorrow, and obsession into a single purpose: to build a monument that would stand as proof of his devotion. What began as a gesture of love slowly became something far greater, an architectural riddle that continues to puzzle scientists and engineers more than 70 years after his death. He was only about 5 feet tall and weighed less than 100 pounds, yet he single-handedly quarried, carved, and moved coral limestone blocks that weighed up to 30 tons each. Without cranes, bulldozers, or even electricity, Edward built walls, towers, thrones, and an entire 2-story structure, all aligned with celestial precision. Every stone in Coral Castle fits so tightly that not even a thin sheet of paper can slide between the joints. There is no mortar, there are no visible supports, yet the structure has survived hurricanes, floods, and time itself without shifting. The largest block weighs around 30 tons heavier than any stone used in the Great Pyramid of Giza per single laborer. Visitors who walk through the site are often struck not only by the artistry, but by the engineering impossibility of it. How did Edward cut, lift, and balance these stones with such accuracy using only hand tools? He had no formal education in architecture or engineering. His known possessions were a few homemade pulleys, tripods, chains, and wooden blocks. Still, he managed to move colossal stones with millimeter precision, and he did it entirely alone. Among Coral Castle's many wonders, the 9-ton revolving gate remains one of its most baffling features. For decades, it swung effortlessly, so perfectly balanced that a child could push it open with one finger. When the gate eventually stopped working in 1986, engineers were brought in to repair it. What they found inside astonished them. The entire gate had been balanced on an iron shaft resting on a perfectly centered bearing. The precision was so exact that modern machinery struggled to replicate it. And yet Edward, a man with no engineering background and primitive tools, had accomplished it alone in the 1930s. Even more strangely, when the gate was reassembled with modern equipment, it never functioned as smoothly again. It was as if Edward had used some technique or knowledge. We no longer understand something that allowed him to manipulate mass and balance in a way beyond the reach of conventional physics. Edward built Coral Castle under the cover of darkness. Neighbors said they never saw him work during the day. Trucks would arrive at night, and by morning, new monoliths had been moved into place. Some claimed to have seen the stones floating in mid-air. Others swore they heard strange metallic humming coming from the work site. Edward was always secretive about his methods. When asked how he managed to move such enormous stones alone, he would only smile and say, "I understand the laws of weight and leverage, and I know the secret of the pyramids." That sentence became the cornerstone of Coral Castle's mystery. What did he mean by the secret of the pyramids? Did he discover a lost principle of ancient physics? Something the builders of Giza also knew, or was it simply metaphorical, an expression of human perseverance? No one could say for sure. In the decades since his death, hundreds of theories have been proposed to explain Edward's seemingly superhuman ability. Some researchers believe he mastered magnetism and resonance, learning how to manipulate gravitational fields using sound frequencies or electromagnetic forces. He was known to have a deep fascination with magnetism, and even wrote several small pamphlets about it, such as Magnetic Current, where he described energy as a living stream that flows through matter. His writings, though cryptic, suggest he believed in a kind of natural harmony between vibration, magnetism, and motion. Others think he used acoustic levitation, an idea suggesting that certain frequencies of sound can reduce or neutralize weight. Ancient legends from Egypt and Tibet speak of monks or priests who could raise stones using synchronized chanting or vibration. Could Edward have rediscovered this ancient knowledge? A more skeptical view suggests he was simply a master of mechanical leverage, using pulleys, tripods, and counterweights with exceptional ingenuity. Perhaps he combined geometry, timing, and balance so precisely that he achieved feats of strength that only seemed impossible. But even professional engineers admit that his precision and speed remain inexplicable. Visitors to Coral Castle often report feeling an uncanny atmosphere, as if the stones themselves hum faintly or resonate with unseen energy. Compasses behave strangely sometimes, spinning unpredictably near certain walls. Edward's workshop, still preserved on the site, contains odd homemade devices, coils, magnets, and iron rods which appear to be part of his experiments. He once claimed that the world is held together by magnets and that by understanding their flow, one could influence matter itself. If that statement sounds eccentric, it's worth remembering many great discoveries in science were once dismissed as madness. What if Edward had indeed stumbled upon a principle that modern physics has yet to rediscover, something that allowed him to harness the Earth's magnetic field to move stone? This is the heart of the enigma. How did Edward Leedskalnin build Coral Castle? Even today, with all our cranes, hydraulics, and precision machinery, no one has successfully replicated his process under the same conditions. He used no electricity, no engines, and no team of workers. Yet he shaped, transported, and balanced stones with an accuracy comparable to laser-cut engineering. Some visitors insist he possessed ancient or extraterrestrial knowledge. Others call him a genius of physics, a man decades ahead of his time. There are even stories claiming he discovered a way to negate gravity, perhaps by using magnetic resonance to alter mass, a concept that borders on science fiction, but continues to fascinate physicists and conspiracy theorists alike. The truth, however, died with him. Edward passed away in 1951, leaving no blueprints, no confessions, and no apprentices. All he left was a note on his door that read, "Going to the hospital." He never returned. After his death, investigators searched the site, hoping to find machines or documents that would explain his methods, but they found nothing. Only the stones remained still, standing still, silent. And perhaps that silence is the message. Beneath all the theories and science, Coral Castle remains a love story, carved in stone. Edward built it for the woman who never returned a love that lived only in memory. Every wall and block bears the weight of a broken heart that refused to fade. Perhaps he was right when he wrote, "Love is the only energy that can move the world." Coral Castle stands as proof that human will can achieve the impossible, even if its secret remains forever unsolved. So we are left with the question that has haunted engineers, historians, and dreamers for almost a century. How did one small man armed with heartbreak and determination move mountains of stone? Did Edward Leedskalnin truly uncover an ancient secret of gravity, or did he simply remind us that some mysteries like love and genius are not meant to be understood? It began with a single stone, a gray-green block of serpentine covered in lines, curves, and strange shapes. At first glance, they looked like decorations. But when archaeologists brushed away the dust of centuries, they realized something astonishing. These symbols weren't random. They were ordered, repeated, aligned in rows. Someone thousands of years ago had carved a message into this stone. A message we still cannot read. This object, known today as the Cascajal block, was discovered in the Mexican state of Veracruz, the heartland of the Olmec civilization, often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica. The Olmec flourished long before the Maya, the Zapotec, or the Aztec, building colossal stone heads and complex ritual centers between 1500 and 400 BCE. But what shocked the world was the possibility that these people who lived more than 3000 years ago may have also been the first to write in the Western Hemisphere. What do you think the symbols on the Cascajal block are hiding? A religious prayer, a historical record, or a mysterious message from a lost civilization? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Cascajal block is small, about the size of a laptop, yet its implications are immense. Across its surface, archaeologists identified 62 distinct symbols arranged in horizontal rows. This structure immediately set it apart from decorative carvings or religious icons. Some signs resemble corn insects, fish plants, and abstract forms. Others are purely geometric, like crosses or ovals. The order and repetition suggest grammar, not art. And yet, despite decades of study, no one knows what any of these symbols mean. There are no bilingual inscriptions to help us know Rosetta Stone of the New World. There are no other long texts to compare, with no clear context of how or where these signs were used. The stone stands alone, like a whisper from a forgotten tongue, cut off mid-sentence. Radiocarbon dating places the Cascajal block around 900 BCE, centuries before the Maya or Zapotec developed their writing systems. If true, this would make the Olmec the first people in the Americas to record language in visible form. Imagine what that means: the ability to fix speech into signs, to record names, rituals, laws, or prayers, to preserve memory beyond the human voice. This is the hallmark of civilization. But in the case of the Olmec, the miracle of their writing comes to us only as a single surviving example, an orphaned script whose family has vanished. Some scholars believe other examples of Olmec writing may exist hidden beneath the tropical soils of Veracruz or Tabasco, or buried under later temples of the Maya who inherited their knowledge. Others suggest the Olmecs may have written on organic materials, bark, cloth, or leather that have long since decayed. When linguists and epigraphers analyzed the symbols, they found rhythms and repetitions that hinted at meaning. Certain signs appear in pairs or repeat at regular intervals, like grammatical markers. A few combinations occur in patterns similar to verbs or personal names in other ancient scripts. Some symbols seem to cluster, perhaps denoting related concepts, much like hieroglyphic words. Others seem to act as punctuation, dividing segments of thought. These hints drive scholars to believe that the Cascajal inscriptions represent a true writing system, not mere religious motifs. But the structure of the writing remains an enigma. Was it logographic, where each symbol stands for an entire word or idea, like Chinese characters, or syllabic representing sounds, or phonetic values like the later Maya glyphs? Every theory breaks down. For one simple reason: there is too little data. One stone, 62 symbols, a single surviving text. This is where the mystery deepens. Despite the obvious order, no one has been able to read the Olmec writing system. Every attempt to decode it ends in frustration. Not because the signs are too complex, but because there is nothing to compare them with. We cannot test whether the signs correspond to a spoken language because we do not even know what language the Olmec spoke. Many researchers suspect it was an early form of the Mixtecoquian family, spoken by some of their modern descendants in southern Mexico today. But even if that's true, how can we map spoken syllables onto forgotten symbols? This lack of context turns every clue into speculation. A spiral might be a snake, or a number, or a wind god. A rectangle might be a temple, or a direction, or an abstract suffix. Some have even suggested the signs could encode ritual chants or astronomical observations recorded for the priests who aligned Olmec temples with the stars. The challenge lies not only in reading the words, but in understanding the mindset of the people who wrote them. Were these inscriptions prayers carved during sacred ceremonies, records of rulers or wars, or coded instructions for rituals that once shook the jungles with drum and fire? Until another artifact is found, the Cascajal block remains a monolith of silence. Not everyone believes it is writing. Some scholars argue that the symbols might be religious emblems arranged for ceremonial reasons rather than linguistic ones. Others question whether the stone itself might have been carved much later or even reused for decoration. Yet the evidence leans toward authenticity. The block was found among Olmec-style ceramics and figurines, matching the cultural layer of around 900 BCE. The carving technique also aligns with tools and methods known from the period. Even skeptics admit if this is not writing, it is a proto-writing system, a direct ancestor to later scripts like the Zapotec and Maya glyphs. The Olmecs vanished around 400 BCE. Their cities abandoned their colossal heads, half buried in the jungle. But their influence never disappeared. The Maya, who flourished centuries later, built upon many Olmec ideas, from calendar systems to sacred cosmology. It is entirely possible that the Olmec script was the seed that grew into the full writing systems of later civilizations. Elements of their symbols, especially those resembling maze serpents and celestial signs, echo faintly in later Mesoamerican iconography. If this lineage is true, then every Maya codex, every Zapotec inscription is a descendant of the forgotten alphabet of the Olmecs, a silent lineage connecting the oldest American thinkers to the astronomer priests of the Classic Age. Olmec art often depicted their rulers as half-human, half-jaguar deities, mediators between the mortal and divine worlds. Many scholars believe the act of writing in Olmec culture was itself a sacred ritual, a way of communicating with the gods. Each symbol carved into stone may have been part of a ceremony, each stroke accompanied by offerings or chants. In this sense, the Cascajal block could be more than text. It could be a ritual artifact, a magical object containing the voices of priests long gone. Perhaps that is why it remains unreadable, because it was never meant to be read by humans, but only by the divine. To this day, archaeologists scour the Olmec heartland in search of another inscription. They dig in San Lorenzo la 23 Zapotes, once the bustling centers of the Olmec world. Every new discovery, a carved stone, a fragment of jade, a symbol on pottery, is carefully compared to the Cascajal block, hoping to find even one matching sign. If another text were found, even a few lines, it could finally open the door to understanding. It could tell us the names of Olmec rulers, their myths, their calendars, even their conception of the universe. It could rewrite the history of the Americas, proving that complex literacy existed long before anyone imagined. But until then, the Olmec script stands as the first and last unbroken code of the New World, a message carved for eternity whose words we may never hear. The Olmec writing system is haunting not for its beauty, but for its silence. Those 62 symbols on the Cascajal block are like the fading heartbeat of a vanished world, proof that humans once tried to preserve thought beyond life itself. Each line carved in stone is both victory and loss, reminding us that even the brightest civilizations can fade, leaving behind only whispers carved in time. Beneath the blazing sun of the Mediterranean, on the rugged island of Sardinia, stand hundreds of colossal stone monuments, silent, immovable, and older than recorded history. These are the megalithic tombs of Sardinia, known locally as the Tomba dei Giganti, or the Tombs of the Giants. Scattered across windswept hills and lonely valleys, they form one of the most mysterious archaeological legacies in Europe. To the modern eye, they are tombs, but to the ancients, they were something far more: gateways between the world of the living and the eternal. Do you think these giant stone tombs were merely burial sites, or gateways connecting humans to the world beyond? Share your thoughts in the comments below. No one knows for certain who built them or why. What survives today are immense stone corridors, some stretching more than 30 meters, lined and roofed with giant slabs ending in an upright facade of massive monoliths, sometimes arranged to resemble the horns of a bull. Each block weighs several tons, yet they were fitted together with such precision that even a blade of grass cannot slip between them. For a civilization without written records or iron tools, such construction defies explanation. Archaeologists attribute these monuments to the Nuragic civilization, a mysterious people who flourished in Sardinia between 1800 and 1200 BCE. The Nuragic were master builders known also for their round stone towers called nuraghi, which still dot the island in the thousands. But while the nuraghi may have served defensive or communal purposes, the tombs appear sacred, imbued with symbols of life, death, and rebirth. Their entrances are aligned precisely with the rising sun of the equinox, as though the architects sought to guide the spirits of the dead toward the light of renewal. Inside the tombs, excavations have revealed traces of communal burials, bones of dozens, sometimes hundreds of individuals laid together in a single chamber. The Sardinians of prehistory seem to view death not as an ending, but as a return to the womb of the earth, a unifying passage into collective ancestry. Many tombs were adorned with carvings of curved horns, stylized faces, or geometric patterns perhaps meant to invoke divine protection or the cosmic cycle of fertility and decay. Yet for all this evidence, the question remains, who possessed the knowledge and strength to build such immense structures? The stones used in some tombs are not found in nearby quarries. They were transported from miles away across uneven, mountainous terrain. Without wheels or beasts of burden, how could they have moved them? And more importantly, why invest such extraordinary effort for the dead? Local legends whisper a different story. According to Sardinian folklore, the tombs of the giants were not human tombs at all, but the resting places of a race of giants who once inhabited the island. These beings, towering and powerful, were said to walk the land before the age of men. Some stories claim they helped shape the hills and move the boulders that still mark ancient sanctuaries. Early travelers in the 19th century even reported finding oversized bones near these tomb skulls and femurs too large for any normal man. Yet those remains have since vanished, lost to time, fire, or silence. Skeptics argue that the legend of giants arose simply because of the tomb's massive scale, that humans confronted with something beyond comprehension invented myths to explain what they could not understand. But the persistence of such stories, not only in Sardinia, but across the ancient world, is striking. From the Cyclopes of Greece to the Nephilim of the Bible, humanity's oldest myths echo the same theme, that there were once beings larger, stronger, and wiser who built what ordinary men could not. Modern science offers another enigma. Measurements show that many of Sardinia's megalithic tombs share astronomical alignments identical to those found at Stonehenge and the temples of Malta. Their axes often point precisely toward the sunrise on the spring and autumn equinoxes. Some researchers believe these structures served as both tombs and observatories, places where the movements of the sun and stars were tracked to mark time seasons and sacred cycles. How such knowledge reached an isolated island in the Bronze Age remains unexplained. Equally puzzling, it's the acoustic resonance within certain tombs. When sound is produced inside chanting, singing, or even low speech, the stones amplify it, creating a deep, haunting echo that vibrates through the body. It's as though the architecture itself was designed for ritual trance communication with the spirits or altered states of consciousness. Archaeologists studying the phenomenon have compared it to similar resonant chambers found in prehistoric sites across Europe and the Middle East, suggesting a shared understanding of how sound could influence the human mind and ritual experience. Then there is the question of energy anomalies. Some researchers have detected unusual electromagnetic readings around the central monoliths of the tombs, stronger than those in the surrounding environment. Whether this is a coincidence of geology or a deliberate alignment with Earth's natural fields, no one can say for sure. But the notion that these ancient builders understood, or at least sensed something about the planet's invisible forces, adds yet another layer to their mystery. If the Nuragic people indeed built these tombs, where did they learn such sophisticated design principles? They left behind no written records, no inscriptions, no definitive artifacts of teaching or transmission. Their stonework appears too advanced to have evolved suddenly on a small, isolated island. This has led some to speculate that Sardinia was once part of a wider prehistoric network, perhaps the same seafaring culture that built megaliths across Europe and North Africa, or even the survivors of a forgotten civilization that predates recorded history. One of the most provocative theories links Sardinia to the legend of Atlantis. Ancient texts describe a powerful island civilization beyond the Pillars of Hercules, modern Gibraltar, that sank after cataclysmic floods. Some researchers note that Sardinia's geography, ancient canals, and concentric ruins bear a resemblance to Plato's account. Could these megalithic tombs be remnants of that lost world, the final monuments of a people who tried to preserve their legacy in stone before vanishing beneath time? Mainstream archaeologists remain cautious, emphasizing the cultural continuity of the Nuragic period and the lack of definitive proof for any lost civilization. Yet even they admit that many aspects of Sardinia's prehistory defy conventional explanation. How could an illiterate Bronze Age society not only quarry, transport, and align multi-ton stones, but also embed in them mathematical precision and cosmic symbolism still admired by modern engineers? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between legend and science. The builders of Sardinia's megalithic tombs may not have been literal giants, but they were giants of understanding people whose spiritual worldview saw no boundary between Earth's sky and the afterlife. They built with purpose to honor the dead, to channel celestial power, to link humanity with the eternal rhythm of the universe. And yet, as we stand before those silent stones today, the question lingers like an echo within their chambers. Who really built them? Were they merely human hands, guided by faith or inheritors of a forgotten knowledge now lost to history? Until that question is answered, the megalithic tombs of Sardinia will remain what they have always been, portals to a mystery carved in stone, whispering across 4,000 years that the past still holds secrets far larger than we dare to imagine. Carved into a red sandstone cliff overlooking the confluence of three mighty rivers, the Minjang Dadu and Qingyi, the great Buddha of Lashan stands as one of humanity's most extraordinary ancient monuments. Rising 71 meters high, with shoulders 28 meters wide and toes larger than a grown man, it has loomed over Sichuan's misty waters for more than 12 centuries. To those who stand at its feet, it seems eternal, immovable, serene, and impossibly precise. Yet behind that tranquil face lies a mystery that has haunted scholars, engineers, and spiritual seekers alike. Who truly conceived this colossal masterpiece? And how was it made with such perfection in the 8th century? Was the great Buddha of Lashan truly built by human hands alone, or guided by a knowledge long lost to history? Share your thoughts in the comments below. According to traditional chronicles, the statue was begun in the year 713 during China's Tang dynasty. It was the vision of a humble Buddhist monk named Haitong, who lived near the dangerous rivers where constant floods and whirlpools claimed countless lives. Believing that a divine presence could calm the waters, he conceived of a monumental Buddha carved directly into the mountain, a guardian spirit watching over the confluence. It was said that he begged for years to gather enough donations, and when corrupt officials attempted to seize the funds, Haitong reportedly gouged out his own eyes to prove his sincerity. Such devotion gave rise to a legend that still echoes in Lashan today. But when Haitong passed away, the statue was far from complete. Decades turned into generations, and the project continued under new rulers, new artisans, and mysterious patrons whose identities were never recorded. Historical archives from the Tang court mention no official decree, no engineering plans, and no known architect responsible for managing the enormous workforce required. And yet after nearly 90 years, the great Buddha of Lashan emerged from the stone, flawless, symmetrical, and enduring, as if sculpted not by human hands, but by an intelligence that transcended time. The first layer of mystery lies in the engineering precision. The statue's proportions are nearly perfect when measured from base to crown, despite being carved from top to bottom on a vertical cliff face without modern scaffolding cranes or surveying instruments. Even more astonishing is the internal drainage system concealed within its body. A network of hidden gutters and channels runs through the head shoulders, and robes designed to divert rainwater and prevent erosion. This ingenious system, still functional after more than a millennium, has baffled modern conservation engineers. How could 8th century artisans have understood such principles of fluid dynamics and structural preservation? And then there's the location itself. The Buddha's placement isn't random. Ancient geomancers believed that energy flowed through the earth like invisible rivers. The site of Lashan sits exactly where the three real rivers converge, an area prone to turbulent currents and deadly whirlpools. Yet somehow the statue's creation coincided with a remarkable change. Historical records note that the river became noticeably calmer after the project began. Some claim this was divine intervention, while others suggest a geological explanation. The tons of rock debris carved from the cliff may have altered the river's depth and flow. Still, the perfect alignment of geography, spirituality, and architecture seems too precise to dismiss as coincidence. But the greatest mystery of all, the one that continues to elude historians, is who truly designed it. Was it really the lone vision of a devout monk, or was Haitong merely the spiritual symbol of a much larger hidden collaboration? Some scholars believe that after Haitong's death, the project was quietly taken over by imperial engineers of the Tang court, under the sponsorship of local governors or Buddhist sects with political influence. Others argue that the techniques used suggest knowledge beyond the Tang's own tradition, perhaps inspired by Indian or Central Asian stone masonry brought along the Silk Road by foreign craftsmen. The facial proportions of the Lashan Buddha, broad forehead, elongated ears, and soft, symmetrical smile bear striking resemblance to Gandharan Buddhist sculptures, which flourished centuries earlier near today's Afghanistan and Pakistan. Could it be that an ancient network of Buddhist architects shared their techniques across continents? Then again, no document carving or inscription names any architect, planner, or master builder. The absence of evidence is eerie, as if those who directed the work chose deliberate anonymity. Some local legends tell of spirit architects, enlightened beings who guided the workers in dreams. Others hint that a secret monastic order known for blending engineering and meditation might have been behind its execution. Even today, geomancers claim the statue's proportions correspond not merely to human scale, but to cosmic geometry, each segment reflecting celestial ratios derived from ancient astronomy. The more one examines the statue, the stranger it becomes. Its eyes seem to follow the light. When the sun strikes at a certain angle, the Buddha's gaze shimmers, creating the illusion of divine awareness. Tourists see it as an optical trick. Locals call it the awakening. Scientists who have studied the phenomenon confirm it's caused by the reflection of mica particles within the sandstone. But why would ancient builders select precisely this type of rock at exactly this orientation unless they understood how light and mineral would interact once again. The line between coincidence and intent blurs. Even the techniques of carving remain largely speculative. The cliff's sheer face would have made access treacherous, yet the symmetry of the body, the detailed folds of the robe, and the delicate contours of the face show a level of planning impossible without a reference model. Some experts propose that artisans may have used a scaled clay prototype and early optical projection, perhaps involving polished bronze mirrors, to transfer proportions onto the cliff, an idea that borders on anachronistic yet fits the evidence. Others point to subtle chisel marks that suggest multiple teams working simultaneously at different heights, each guided by a single unseen coordinator whose mastery of scale and geometry exceeded anything recorded in Tang engineering manuals. This leads to the haunting possibility that the great Buddha of Lashan was not built by accident or faith alone, but by a school of architects who possessed knowledge now lost to history, knowledge of natural drainage, geological stability, celestial alignment, and optical geometry. A knowledge that disappeared as dynasties fell and records burned. When the Tang collapsed in the 10th century, so too vanished the names of those who brought stone to life. Today, as conservationists use lasers to map every curve and fissure, they find more questions than answers. Some channels within the statue lead nowhere, sealed off, deep inside the stone. Were they abandoned tunnels or intentional resonant chambers to amplify sound and vibration during ancient rituals? Ground-penetrating scans reveal hollow spaces behind the chest and knees, the purpose of which remains unknown. Could they have housed relics or served as part of the hidden support system of the cliff itself? Every discovery adds another layer of intrigue, turning the great Buddha into not just a monument of faith, but a riddle carved in stone. The great Buddha of Lashan stands as both a masterpiece of faith and a mystery of ancient engineering. Born from the Tang dynasty's golden age, it unites art, science, and spirituality with perfection so precise it feels almost divine. For over 1,000 years, floods and storms have failed to harm it, as if protected by something beyond human understanding. Who truly designed it? The devoted monk Haitong, or unseen minds lost to history? Beneath that serene smile, the Buddha remains silent, guarding a secret carved forever in stone. In the dry plains of what is now Pakistan and northwest India, once thrived one of humanity's earliest urban civilizations, the Indus Valley Civilization, or Harappan culture, which flourished between 2600 and 1900 BCE. Its people built cities with advanced drainage systems, standardized weights, intricate seals, and trade routes stretching across Mesopotamia. Yet among the most intriguing remnants left behind are not the monumental buildings or the mysterious script, but the tiny figurines, delicate creations of clay, terracotta, and metal that have quietly outlasted their makers by over 4,000 years. Thousands of these figurines have been unearthed in the ancient cities of Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Lothal, and Kalibangan. Some depict women with elaborate headdresses, others show animals, musicians, and mythical beings. Many are just a few centimeters tall, but their craftsmanship suggests a people of imagination, devotion, and precision. The question that has haunted archaeologists ever since their discovery is simple yet profound. What were these figurines made for? Do you think these small figurines were toys, ritual objects, or sacred symbols of the ancient Indus people? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The first impression they leave is one of beauty and skill. Even with primitive tools, Indus artisans achieved remarkable realism, curved postures, subtle smiles, and detailed ornaments. The famous dancing girl of Mohenjo-daro, cast in bronze stands, barely 10.5 centimeters tall, yet radiates confidence and grace. Her right hand, rests on her hip. Her eyes seem to gaze far beyond her time. To modern viewers, she embodies freedom, vitality, and feminine power. But to the people who created her, she might have meant something entirely different. Was she a dancer, immortalized in art, or a divine figure, a goddess of movement and life? No inscription, no record, and no context have ever answered that. Her silent posture challenges us, suggesting that beauty itself may have carried sacred meaning in a world where religion and art were inseparable. One of the oldest theories about these figurines connects them to fertility rituals. Many female statues are depicted with broad hips, full breasts, and intricate jewelry symbols that in ancient cultures often represented fertility, abundance, and motherhood. Some scholars argue that the Indus people worshipped a mother goddess, a deity of creation and renewal. This would make these figurines early examples of religious icons used to invoke prosperity and the cycles of life. However, the argument is not without problems. If the figurines were truly objects of worship, why are so many crudely made? Why do they appear in ordinary homes rather than temples? Perhaps they were both sacred and personal objects used in domestic rituals rather than in organized religion. Each household might have had its own little deity, handmade and cherished, expressing faith in its simplest form. Another school of thought dismisses the religious explanation and sees the figurines as children's toys. Indeed, some have holes through them, possibly for strings, and show signs of frequent handling. But then there are others too fragile or detailed for play. A few even depict composite creatures, half-human, half-animal creations, too symbolic to be mere entertainment. Could they have been protective charms or magical totems meant to ward off misfortune? In many ancient cultures, small effigies were believed to hold power, either to attract good luck or to repel evil spirits. Perhaps these figurines were placed in homes near doorways or under floors to keep away sickness or to bless a marriage. Each figure may have had a specific spiritual function, its meaning known only to the maker. If the Indus script could be read, this mystery might have been solved long ago. Tiny seals and symbols accompany some figurines, yet their meanings remain lost. The Indus language, neither Dravidian nor Indo-European, has resisted every attempt at translation. Without words, the figurines cannot tell us who they represent or what they meant to the people who shaped them. Archaeologist Gregory Possehl once called these artifacts the speechless storytellers of the Indus. They are evidence of a complex culture that left behind no grand temples, no royal tombs, and no clear hierarchy, only these small, human-sized tokens of belief and imagination. A few figurines depict men seated in positions resembling yogic meditation, surrounded by animals similar to later Hindu images of Shiva as Pashupati, the lord of beasts. Others bear ornaments or features that echo the goddess Shakti. This has led to speculation that Indus religion might be the ancestor of later Hindu traditions. If so, these figurines could be the first tangible expressions of what would evolve into one of the world's great religions. Still, there is no definitive proof, no temple walls, no sacred texts, only clay and silence. Perhaps we are projecting our own religious frameworks onto a civilization that saw the world in completely different terms. Not all figurines are made equal. While most are of simple terracotta, others use rare materials like faience, stone, or metal. These were often found in wealthier homes, suggesting that ownership might have denoted social rank or prestige. Some could have been exchanged as gifts between elites, serving as symbols of identity or alliance. In a civilization that left behind no kings and no palaces, these figurines may have functioned as silent emblems of status, their beauty a reflection of one's place in society. Here lies the heart of the enigma. After nearly a century of study, no theory can fully explain the true purpose of the Indus Valley figurines. Every interpretation, religious, social, artistic, captures only fragments of their mystery. The deeper we look, the more questions arise. Why are they found in homes, not temples? Why are some female figures broken deliberately as if during a ritual act? Why are animal figurines so abundant? Bulls, elephants, and birds, each rendered with care and reverence. Were they offerings to nature, representations of ancestors, or perhaps vessels to carry prayers? Some archaeologists believe that when an Indus family prayed for good harvests or safe childbirth, they may have created and later destroyed these figurines, releasing symbolic energy back into the world. Others see them as visual stories, a silent language that captured emotions and myths in clay. The absence of temples in Indus cities adds to the riddle. Could it be that religion was not centralized but lived within every home, every hearth, every small idol molded by hand? If so, the figurines were not just religious artifacts. They were intimate connections between the human and the divine, shaped by ordinary people seeking meaning in their world. Perhaps their very purpose was to remain unknown, to serve as vessels of belief so personal that even their creators might not have sought to define them. They remind us that not all mysteries are meant to be solved, and that the truest spirituality may reside in the quiet spaces between knowledge and wonder. The Indus Valley figurines, now resting behind museum glass from Delhi to London, still radiate quiet mystery. In their tiny shapes lie echoes of rituals, music, and faith from a vanished civilization. Their silence speaks to something timeless, the human urge to give form to meaning and soul to matter. They are not mere relics, but mirrors of our own spirit, reminding us that once art, belief, and life were one, and that even a handful of clay can hold the heart of an entire civilization. Hidden deep within the rugged cliffs of the Bandiagara Plateau in Mali, West Africa, lives the Dogon people, a culture so ancient and so intricate that it continues to baffle anthropologists and astronomers alike. For centuries, the Dogon have maintained a body of knowledge that seems far too advanced for a civilization with no written science, no telescopes, and little contact with the outside world. Their understanding of the cosmos, especially the star system of Sirius, has given rise to one of the most compelling and enduring mysteries in human history. How did they know what modern science would only confirm thousands of years later? How do you think the Dogon truly learned this knowledge through observation from a lost ancient civilization or from visitors from the stars? Share your thoughts in the comments below. According to Dogon oral tradition, Sirius, known to them as Sigui Tolo, is not a single star, but part of a complex system of multiple celestial bodies. Long before the invention of telescopes, the Dogon described Potolo, a small invisible companion star that orbits Sirius every 50 years. They said this star was made of a substance so heavy that even a tiny seed-sized piece would weigh as much as a man could carry. Today, scientists recognize Potolo as the white dwarf Sirius B, an object of such density that a single cubic inch of its matter would weigh several tons. Even more astonishingly, modern astronomy confirms the Dogon were correct. Sirius B does indeed orbit Sirius A approximately every 50 years, a detail no naked eye observation could ever have revealed. Their knowledge does not end there. The Dogon also speak of a third star, Emeyatolo, orbiting Sirius A as well. Western scientists once dismissed this as myth, but recent astrophysical observations have suggested the possible existence of a small red or brown dwarf companion, what could be the elusive Sirius C. If this turns out to be true, it would mean that an isolated African tribe without telescopes or modern instruments somehow knew the structure of a triple-star system that even the best astronomers of the 19th and 20th centuries could barely detect. The Dogon's astronomical insight extends far beyond the Sirius system. They understand that the Earth revolves around the Sun, and that the Moon merely reflects the Sun's light. They know of Jupiter's 4 major moons, the rings of Saturn, and the spiral structure of the Milky Way. They describe the universe as being born from a single seed, a concept they call Po, which resonates with the modern Big Bang theory. Within their art and rituals, spirals and circular patterns symbolize galaxies, planetary motion, and cosmic balance. It is as if their spiritual worldview and their cosmic science are one and the same two languages describing the same universe. Every 50 years, the Dogon celebrate the Sigi Festival, an elaborate event that marks the completion of Sirius B's orbit around its parent star. During this celebration, they carve massive wooden masks, some stretching over 10 meters high, representing the unity of heaven and earth, life and death, time and rebirth. They perform rituals that mimic celestial cycles and retell the story of their ancestors and of the beings who once came from the stars to teach them. For the Dogon, the movement of the heavens is not just a scientific fact, it is a sacred rhythm woven into the fabric of human life. Central to their mythology are the Nomo, amphibious, fish-like beings who descended from the sky in a great vessel accompanied by fire and thunder. The Nomo, according to Dogon tradition, were divine messengers from Sirius who brought order to chaos, gave life to the earth, and taught the Dogon the secrets of the stars. They introduced agriculture, speech, and morality, and then returned to the heavens. To the Dogon, the Nomo are the source of both civilization and cosmic understanding. To modern researchers, they represent one of the most enigmatic elements of African mythology, the tale of celestial visitors granting wisdom to humankind. Yet for all its beauty and coherence, this knowledge presents a profound scientific riddle. How could the Dogon have known such advanced details about Sirius? Details that require complex astronomical equipment to confirm the first European observation of Sirius B was made in 1862 by Alvan Graham Clark, using a powerful telescope. But the Dogon had already incorporated the 50-year orbit of Potolo into their traditions long before that date. French anthropologists Marcel Griol and Germaine Dieterlen, who lived among the Dogon in the 1930s and 1940s, meticulously recorded their teachings, including the startlingly accurate description of Sirius B. Their findings caused a sensation when first published and deep controversy ever since. Skeptics have argued that the Dogon might have learned this information from Western sources, perhaps through contact with explorers or missionaries. Yet this explanation collapses under scrutiny. The level of precision in Dogon cosmology, not only regarding Sirius, but also planetary orbits, atomic density, and celestial mechanics, suggests a deeper, older source of knowledge. Furthermore, the Dogon cosmological system is deeply integrated into their language, art, and rituals, far too deeply to have been recently borrowed or fabricated. The greatest question still remains unanswered. How could the Dogon possibly have known these things? Many theories have been proposed, each fascinating and controversial in its own way. Some believe in the lost civilization hypothesis, suggesting that the Dogon inherited their knowledge from an ancient culture that vanished from history, perhaps one that existed long before humanity began recording its past. Scholars point to striking similarities in language and symbolism between the Dogon and ancient Egypt, as well as parallels between their deities and the Egyptian gods Osiris and Isis. Could the Dogon be distant descendants of a civilization that once mapped the heavens long before Greece or Babylon ever looked to the stars? In contrast, the extraterrestrial contact hypothesis argues that the Dogon were telling the truth, that the Nomo were real beings who came from the Sirius system. If this were true, their influence could explain how the Dogon possessed knowledge so far ahead of their time. Supporters of this idea note that myths about gods from the sky or teachers from the stars appear in many ancient cultures, from the Sumerian Anunnaki to the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl of Mesoamerica. Perhaps the Dogon preserved the clearest and oldest account of a prehistoric contact between humanity and the stars. Meanwhile, the anthropological hypothesis takes a more cautious stance, proposing that the Dogon's astronomical knowledge may have been misunderstood or exaggerated over time. It's possible that Western anthropologists misinterpreted symbolic descriptions as literal scientific data, or that the Dogon skillfully integrated new information into their traditional cosmology. Yet even this explanation struggles to account for the astonishing precision of the Dogon's astronomical details, from the extreme density of the white dwarf star to the 50-year orbital period of Sirius B. Whatever the truth, the Dogon case challenges our assumptions about the limits of ancient knowledge. If their cosmic understanding arose independently, it implies a depth of intuition and observation that transcends our modern notions of scientific progress. If it was inherited, it hints at a lost chapter in human civilization. And if it was given by something or someone not of this earth, it may be the most important contact story in our species' history. As modern telescopes peer deeper into space, we continue to find echoes of what the Dogon have said for generations. The density of white dwarfs, the existence of binary and trinary star systems, the spiral arms of galaxies, all match their ancient stories. Whether coincidence, intuition, or cosmic inheritance, their understanding of the heavens remains one of the most extraordinary puzzles in anthropology. And so the mystery endures. Were the Dogon the keepers of a forgotten science, heirs of an extinct civilization, or witnesses to something far beyond our comprehension? The truth hides within the layers of their rituals, their symbols, and their whispered stories passed down through the centuries, stories that bridge the gap between myth and astronomy, between Earth and the stars. Perhaps somewhere in those vast African skies, where Sirius burns like a diamond, lies the answer we still seek. In the dry heart of the Jordan Valley lies one of humanity's oldest enigmas, the ancient city of Jericho, a settlement so old that it predates the Egyptian pyramids Stonehenge and even the rise of written language. Archaeologists believe it may have been first inhabited around 10,000 BCE, during a time when humans were still transitioning from hunting and gathering to organized farming. Yet what makes Jericho truly astonishing is not just its age, but its walls, massive stone fortifications that seem far too advanced for their time. These walls, and the mysterious people who built them, stand as one of archaeology's greatest puzzles. Who were the builders of Jericho? Were the builders of Jericho ordinary Neolithic villagers, or the last survivors of a forgotten civilization? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your theory. The first hint of Jericho's incredible antiquity came in the mid-20th century, when British archaeologist Kathleen Kenyon led excavations that revealed layer upon layer of ancient habitation. At the deepest level, she found the remnants of a stone wall nearly 5 meters high and 2 meters thick, accompanied by a tower rising another 8 meters above the ground. This wall wasn't a rough pile of stones, it was a carefully engineered structure built with precision and purpose. The stones were fitted together with surprising accuracy, forming a barrier strong enough to withstand both time and erosion. But for what reason? Why would a community of early Neolithic farmers and foragers build such an imposing fortification? Some scholars argue that the wall was a form of defense, perhaps against neighboring tribes or wild animals that roamed the region. Others believe it was designed to hold back floodwaters from the nearby Jordan River, protecting the settlement from seasonal deluges. Yet these explanations fail to convince everyone. There's no evidence of warfare or even violent conflict from that period, and the wall's placement doesn't perfectly align with the valley's floodplain. Moreover, the massive stone tower, with its interior staircase and sophisticated geometry, seems less like a utilitarian structure and more like something symbolic, possibly tied to religious or astronomical purposes. That tower in particular continues to confound experts. It was built of solid limestone with a spiraling staircase leading upward to what might have been a viewing platform or ritual chamber. Some researchers believe it could have functioned as a solar observatory designed to mark the setting of the sun during the summer solstice, evidence of a society already observing celestial patterns. Others argue it may have been a monument of authority, a physical manifestation of hierarchy in one of the world's first proto-cities. Whatever its original use, its construction required planning, labor organization, and architectural knowledge far beyond what is expected from people of the 9th millennium BCE. So who were these people? The archaeological record tells us that Jericho's earliest inhabitants lived in round mud brick houses, harvested wild grains, and buried their dead beneath their homes. They had no writing system, no metal tools, and no domesticated animals large enough to assist with hauling or construction. And yet they managed to quarry, transport, and arrange hundreds of tons of stone with mathematical precision. To many, this suggests an intelligence and social organization that arose far earlier than historians had ever imagined. To others, it hints at something deeper, perhaps a forgotten lineage of builders whose knowledge has been lost to time. Over the centuries, Jericho would be rebuilt again and again, layer upon layer, each civilization rising from the ruins of the one before. But the original wall, the Neolithic wall of Jericho, remains the most mysterious. Long before biblical accounts of Joshua's trumpets and collapsing walls, long before kings and scribes, there was already a city of stone in the desert. The people who built it left no names, no stories, no records, only a structure that seems to whisper across 10 millennia, "We were here first." The mystery deepens when we consider the scale of effort required. The tower alone would have needed the labor of hundreds of individuals over weeks or months. Yet Jericho's population may have been only a few hundred people at the time. How did such a small community achieve a project of this magnitude? Were they guided by a powerful leader, a priest-architect, or a collective vision born from shared fear or faith? Some researchers suggest that the wall was part of a ritual landscape built not for defense but for spiritual protection, marking the boundary between the sacred and the profane. Others speculate that Jericho may have inherited techniques from an earlier, now-vanished culture, a civilization that carried the knowledge of stoneworking long before history began. This idea of a prehistoric, pre-agricultural society capable of monumental construction challenges nearly everything we think we know about human development. If the builders of Jericho truly possess such skill, then they might represent the missing link between hunter-gatherer bands and organized urban societies. Their craftsmanship, organization, and vision could have inspired later builders across the Fertile Crescent. Perhaps Jericho was not an isolated settlement at all, but rather the legacy of a much older tradition, now buried beneath time and sand. Even modern technology struggles to fully explain their achievement. LiDAR mapping and carbon dating continue to confirm the astonishing age of the site, but the precise methods used to carve, transport, and align the massive stones remain uncertain. There are no quarries nearby, no surviving tools, and no depictions of construction. How could people without metal chisels shape limestone so evenly? How did they coordinate the placement of blocks weighing hundreds of kilograms without beasts of burden or wheeled transport? The silence of the evidence only amplifies the enigma. In religious tradition, Jericho occupies another dimension of mystery. The book of Joshua describes the city as having walls that fell flat when trumpets sounded, and the Israelites marched around them. For centuries, believers and skeptics alike have debated whether this biblical story reflects an actual event, a symbolic myth, or perhaps an echo of something far older, the memory of an ancient walled city whose ruins still stood as a silent giant in the desert. Could the story of Jericho's fall be a distant recollection of the first builders themselves, misremembered through millennia of oral tradition? What makes this mystery so haunting is not only the wall itself, but the absence of identity behind it. The people of Jericho left no inscriptions, no language, no trace of how they viewed their world. Yet in their stones, they recorded a message more enduring than words: the human will to build, protect, and transcend. Their city may have begun as a cluster of mud huts by a spring, but in erecting that massive wall, they declared themselves architects of permanence, defying nature and impermanence. In an age before civilization had a name. Every new excavation reveals more questions than answers. The deeper archaeologists dig, the older Jericho becomes layers upon layers of human ambition stretching back to the dawn of time. Beneath each stratum lies another generation of builders, and beneath them, perhaps something even older. Were these walls the work of the first city dwellers, or the last heirs of an even older culture, erased by cataclysm or climate change? Could the flood myths of the ancient Near East stories of deluge, destruction, and rebirth have roots in the memories of those who built Jericho's stone defenses against encroaching waters? And still, one question refuses to die, the one that shadows every archaeological trench, every weathered block of limestone. Who truly built the walls of Jericho? Were they simple villagers acting out of necessity, or visionaries inheriting forgotten knowledge? Did they build in fear of floods, or in reverence for the heavens? Were they the first true architects, or the last echoes of a lost world that preceded history itself? Until the sands of Jericho yield their final secret, the identity of these ancient builders will remain one of the most enduring enigmas of our species. Their stones still stand, whispering across 12,000 years. We built, and we are remembered. Around 40,000 years ago, a new kind of human walked into the icy plains and dense forests of Ice Age Europe, tall, strong, and strikingly intelligent. They were the Cro-Magnon people, our earliest Homo sapiens ancestors on the continent. Their arrival marked the beginning of a new era, one filled with art-complex tools and a sense of self-awareness no other species had displayed before. Unlike the heavy-browed Neanderthals, Cro-Magnons looked almost exactly like us. Their faces were broad but expressive, their limbs long and agile, and their skulls rounded with foreheads that spoke of intelligence. If you passed one on a crowded street today, you might not even notice the difference. They lived through some of the harshest climates the planet had ever seen. Glacial winds, mammoth herds, saber-toothed predators, and yet they thrived. They left behind intricate carvings, musical instruments, and cave art that still stuns modern scientists. And then, without warning, they vanished. Did the Cro-Magnon people truly vanish, or did they simply become us? Leave your thoughts below. The mystery of their disappearance might be closer to home than we think. Before their mysterious disappearance, the Cro-Magnons had built a culture of astonishing sophistication. They decorated their bodies with shells and beads, buried their dead with ochre and ornaments, and painted scenes of bison and horses on cavern walls with an artist's precision. In Lascaux, Altamira, and Chauvet caves, their art pulses with life animals appear to move under flickering torchlight as if frozen moments from a vanished world. Their tools were no less impressive: barbed harpoons, needles made of bone, finely crafted blades, and hunting weapons designed with aerodynamic perfection. They mastered fire-tailored clothing for survival in the freezing tundra, and organized complex hunting groups that cooperated with almost military precision. But even more astonishing than their physical creations was their mind. They seem to have believed in an afterlife, in spirits, and in symbolic thinking traits that marked the dawn of human consciousness. The Cro-Magnon world was not just one of survival, it was one of meaning. How they rose to dominance remains one of the great riddles of anthropology. Emerging from Africa as part of the Homo sapiens expansion, they arrived in Europe and encountered the Neanderthals, a species that had lived there for hundreds of thousands of years. Yet within a few thousand years, Neanderthals disappeared and Cro-Magnons flourished. Some scientists suggest interbreeding. Others argue that Cro-Magnons outcompeted their cousins through superior communication, cooperation, and creativity. Their larger social networks allowed them to exchange knowledge and survive climate shifts. The genetic evidence we carry today, roughly 1–2% Neanderthal DNA in modern Eurasians, hints that the line between species was never absolute. Still, the Cro-Magnons were something new. They embodied a cognitive leap, a sudden flowering of symbolic thought, music, ritual, and art. No one can fully explain how or why this revolution happened. Between 30,000 and 15,000 years ago, Europe was locked in the grip of the last ice age. Vast glaciers carved the land, temperatures plummeted, and massive beasts like mammoths and cave lions roamed. The Cro-Magnons adapted brilliantly. They followed herds, built shelters from bones and hides, and used fire to light and warm their dark, frozen world. Even in such conditions, they thrived. Populations spread from France to Siberia, leaving behind artifacts that showed trade, travel, and communication across enormous distances. They formed early clans, families, and social units that shared tools and rituals. And then, after thousands of years of brilliance, something changed. Around 12,000 years ago, the trail of Cro-Magnon artifacts begins to thin. Fewer burials, fewer painted caves, fewer traces of their presence. Archaeologists find a strange silence in the soil where once there had been life. The end of the Ice Age brought massive changes, melting glaciers, flooding valleys, shifting ecosystems. Forests replaced tundras. The megafauna they depended on began to vanish. Food sources dwindled, and patterns of migration broke apart. Some groups adapted by developing agriculture and settling, while others faded into extinction. But with Cro-Magnon, it's not extinction in the traditional sense. There are no fossilized bones showing mass deaths, no signs of violence or disease sweeping through their populations. They simply disappeared. This is where the greatest mystery lies. Around 10,000 years ago, the Cro-Magnons, the most intelligent, resourceful, and creative humans of their time, vanish from the archaeological record. There is no clear evidence of where they went, nor any catastrophic event to explain their disappearance. One theory suggests they merged completely with newer human populations, blending their genes, languages, and cultures until there was no distinction left. Another theory points to climate upheaval. As the Ice Age ended, the very skills that made them masters of cold environments became useless in the warmer forests that followed. Yet some researchers argue there is something more, that a sudden population bottleneck, disease, or social collapse erased them faster than natural adaptation could occur. The most haunting idea of all is that the Cro-Magnons didn't vanish at all. They became us. Their disappearance was not an end, but a transformation. What vanished was not their species, but their identity absorbed into the next stage of human civilization. Still, the abruptness of their disappearance continues to baffle science. Why does the archaeological record show such a sharp decline in their cultural artifacts? Where are the transitional remains? What happened to their languages, their art, their ways of life? It is as if, one morning, Europe simply woke up without them. Genetic research has confirmed that modern Europeans carry the DNA of Cro-Magnon ancestors. This proves they didn't die out, they merged. The line between them and us blurs until it disappears entirely. Their descendants walked into the Neolithic era, built farming communities, and laid the foundation for civilization itself. Yet even with genetic continuity, the cultural break remains inexplicable. The symbolic art, the cave rituals, the deep spirituality of the Cro-Magnon world all seem to vanish, abruptly replaced by a more practical, agrarian way of life. It's as if humanity traded wonder for survival. Every handprint on a cave wall, every ochre-covered skeleton, every carved figurine. These are the whispers of a people who lived, dreamed, and disappeared. Their art suggests a mind capable of imagination and empathy, a mind that questioned existence itself. And yet no written words remain, no monuments, no histories, only shadows in limestone, and the faint memory of their presence in our DNA. Archaeologists still search for answers. Was it climate disease assimilation? Or did the Cro-Magnons evolve so seamlessly into modern humanity that history itself forgot to record their passing? Perhaps the disappearance of the Cro-Magnon people is less a tragedy and more a beginning. Their extinction was the final step in humanity's unbroken chain, a moment when prehistory gave birth to history. When you look at their cave paintings, you are looking through the eyes of your own ancestors, people who laughed, hunted, loved, and wondered about the stars. Their story didn't end in the Ice Age. It continues in every heartbeat today. In the end, the disappearance of the Cro-Magnon is not just a scientific puzzle, it's a mirror, a reminder of how fragile identity is, how civilizations rise and vanish, and how the story of humankind is one of endless transformation. Perhaps the Cro-Magnons never vanished at all. Perhaps they are simply still here living within us, in the spark of creativity, the yearning for meaning, and the timeless human instinct to leave a mark on the world. Along the windswept shores of Koekaha Beach, on the east coast of New Zealand's South Island, lie enormous stone spheres, round, solid and ancient, beyond imagination. These formations, known as the Moeraki boulders, have rested here for millions of years. Yet even as time erodes all things, their perfection endures defiantly, as if some invisible hand had shaped them with purpose and precision. Do you believe the Moeraki boulders are merely a natural wonder, or the remnants of an ancient intelligence long forgotten? Share your thoughts below. Perhaps the key to this mystery lies within your own imagination. Each Moeraki boulder measures between 0.5 meter and over 2 meters in diameter, weighing several tons. Yet what astonishes scientists most is their near-perfect spherical shape. In nature, the formation of flawlessly round objects is extremely rare, as every force, wind waves, and geological shifts inevitably distorts matter over time. But here along Koekaha Beach, dozens of boulders remain uniform and symmetrical, as if cast from a mold, their surfaces smooth, their proportions almost mathematically precise in every direction. It feels as though some invisible intelligence once intervened, crafting them with a purpose that remains an enduring mystery. According to geologists, the Moeraki boulders were formed through a process known as concretion, the gradual accumulation of minerals such as calcite, dolomite, and clay around an organic or inorganic core buried deep within ancient seabed sediments. Over tens of millions of years, these mineral layers hardened, creating the massive stone spheres we see today, believed to have formed roughly 60 million years ago, when this region still lay beneath the ocean. Yet this explanation remains unsatisfying to many scientists. Elsewhere in the world, similar processes produce irregular, distorted concretions, never achieving the flawless roundness found at Moeraki. Even more puzzling, these boulders share nearly identical size, shape, and internal structure, and are arranged along the coastline in a way that evokes the sense of a hidden pattern or a purpose that seems to reach beyond the boundaries of natural law. The indigenous Maori people, the first inhabitants of this land, tell a very different story. They say these are not mere stones, but the remains of the legendary canoe Arai Te Uru, which wrecked while carrying treasures and food to shore. When the vessel broke apart, baskets of kumara pumpkins and gourds rolled onto the beach and turned to stone. Beneath this poetic legend lies a profound belief that the Moeraki boulders carry ancestral spirits and mark a sacred bridge between the human and spiritual worlds. When some of the Moeraki boulders crack open, they reveal a stunningly intricate crystalline structure within interwoven bands of calcite, forming vein-like patterns, sometimes radiating outward in star shapes or spirals, giving the impression of energy frozen inside stone. Mineralogists have noted that these patterns bear a surprising resemblance to electromagnetic energy distributions observed in modern crystals. This perfect symmetry and internal order have led many to wonder, could these formations be more than a geological phenomenon? Perhaps traces of an ancient physical or energetic process still beyond human understanding. Some visitors even claim to feel a faint warmth or subtle vibration when touching the stones, as if they are emitting a hidden energy that continues to pulse even after tens of millions of years. At sunset, the shadows of these spheres stretch across the sand like miniature planets resting on the earth, evoking a surreal beauty. Visitors often describe the feeling of touching them as warm and alive, as if a subtle pulse beats within. Scientists dismiss such impressions, but it is precisely these sensations that make the Moeraki boulders a living symbol at the boundary of science and myth. One of the details that puzzles scientists the most is the way the Moeraki boulders are arranged. They do not lie randomly like rocks scattered by the sea, but appear in small clusters, each containing 5 to 7 boulders, spaced almost evenly apart. Some researchers suggest this pattern is merely the result of natural coastal erosion. However, geomagnetic surveys of the area have revealed faint magnetic lines that align remarkably well with the positions of the spheres, hinting at the possibility of an underlying pattern or intentional arrangement dating back millions of years. Could this be a mere coincidence or a remnant of an ancient knowledge long lost to time? The mystery surrounding the Moeraki boulders has sparked countless bold theories. Some scholars believe these formations are not merely natural phenomena, but remnants of a prehistoric civilization that once possessed deep knowledge of sacred geometry and Earth's magnetic fields. According to this view, the boulders may have served as devices for storing or transmitting energy, much like the power stones described in ancient legends. Others propose that they are a unique fossilized form of ancient life, mineralized over millions of years, a hypothesis dismissed by modern science, yet one that continues to ignite imagination for their perfection, seems to surpass the limits of what nature alone could create. A bolder hypothesis suggests that if the Earth can generate energy spheres within its core, then the Moeraki boulders might be physical remnants of ancient geomagnetic activity points where electromagnetic currents once converged, causing minerals to crystallize in perfect symmetry. According to this perspective, they were not crafted by human hands, but are creations of the Earth itself, formed as part of a natural mechanism to balance planetary energy. The structure and placement of these spheres evoke comparisons to the ancient stone circles of Scotland and the spiral rock formations of Malta, all seemingly carrying the same message that the Earth may preserve traces of natural energy patterns humanity has yet to fully decode. The strangest part is that the Moeraki boulders appear to still be forming even today. Along the coastal cliffs of Koekohe, researchers have discovered new spherical stones gradually emerging as wind and waves erode the surrounding mudstone. These newly exposed boulders share the same shape size and mineral composition as the ancient ones that have rested there for millions of years. This has led many to believe that a mysterious natural mechanism may exist beneath the ground, silently creating them over time, like a geological machine that continues to operate. If this is mere coincidence, then why does the process persist even now? No final answer exists. Science can describe their formation, but not explain their perfection. Myth can tell of spirits and shipwrecks, but not prove them. Between these two worlds, fact and legend, the Moeraki boulders remain silently defying human understanding. Perhaps they are simply nature's masterpiece, a testament to the Earth's boundless creativity. Or perhaps they are the remnants of a lost ancient knowledge, a message carved in stone from a time when humankind still conversed with the cosmos. Whatever the truth, the Moeraki boulders stand as one of the most beautiful enigmas on Earth, where nature, time, and imagination merge, leaving us with one haunting question: who or what truly created them? Was it the hand of ancient humans, a geomagnetic phenomenon still beyond our grasp? Or did the Earth itself inscribe these perfect circles to remind us that much of its mystery still lies unseen? Nestled among the sacred ruins of Delphi, where the oracle once spoke, the will of the gods lies a silent enigma that most visitors overlook. A single column, half-carved and forever incomplete, still attached to the bedrock from which it was born. Unlike the grand pillars that once held up the Temple of Apollo, this one never rose to join them. It remains as if frozen in the act of creation, an unfinished whisper from the ancient world, suspended between human ambition and divine silence. What do you think really happened at Delphi? Was this column abandoned by accident or deliberately left unfinished as a message from the gods? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you believe. When archaeologists rediscovered Delphi in the 19th century, they were stunned to find this abandoned column, drum half-shaped, half-stone, resting quietly within the quarry near the sanctuary. Its fluted edges, precisely etched into the marble, fade abruptly into untouched rock, as if the sculptor had simply vanished mid-swing. To the untrained eye, it might seem like an incomplete work, but to historians, it is a rare time capsule that captures the very process of creation and perhaps a deeper story of why creation itself was halted. This unfinished column does not belong to any known temple structure. It lies close to the Temple of Apollo, the heart of Delphi's sacred complex, yet slightly apart, like a relic in exile. That separation alone suggests something deliberate or catastrophic. Close inspection reveals fine chisel marks evenly spaced and consistent with classical Greek stone-working methods. Yet what astonishes scholars is the precision. The symmetrical grooves carved into dense limestone show a mastery far beyond primitive tools. Some of the cuts are so smooth that researchers have debated whether metallic saws or advanced polishing techniques were used, contradicting what is believed about 5th century BCE Greek craftsmanship. These faint scars of workmanship whisper of a process abruptly interrupted. There is no sign of erosion consistent with centuries of use, no fractures from collapse or fire. It is as though the project was stopped intentionally, not by time, but by human decision. This is where the mystery deepens. Why would ancient Greek craftsmen, known for their perfectionism, discipline, and almost spiritual devotion, to form abandon a column in the middle of their most sacred site. 3 centuries of theories have followed, but none have answered fully. One possibility is natural disaster. Delphi sits on a fault line, and earthquakes have ravaged the region many times throughout history. Perhaps a sudden tremor shattered nearby stones, forcing artisans to abandon the site. Yet geological studies show no corresponding quake in the strata from the period when the temple was being expanded. Another theory speaks of political upheaval. Delphi changed hands many times between city-states like Athens, Sparta, and Thebes. Wars interrupted construction, funding vanished, and sacred projects were left to crumble. Could the unfinished column be a victim of this political instability? Possibly, but then why was no one ever sent back to complete it during later restorations when the temple was rebuilt several times? A third explanation dives into the religious and spiritual realm. Delphi was not just a city, it was the navel of the ancient world, the Omphalos, where gods communicated with mortals through the oracle. Some historians believe the column was never meant to be finished. Perhaps it symbolized an eternal act of creation, left incomplete, to show that even divine works must remain imperfect in the mortal realm. In ancient Greek philosophy, to leave something unfinished could be an act of ritual humility before the gods, an acknowledgement that perfection belongs only to the divine. But there are darker interpretations too. Certain fringe researchers propose that the workers simply vanished victims of plague, landslide, or even cultic sacrifice. Others speculate the column was deliberately abandoned as a bad omen. Maybe the priestesses of Apollo deemed the project cursed after an oracle's warning. In a place like Delphi, where every stone carried religious significance, a single ill-fated prophecy could stop an entire construction effort. What's haunting is not the number of theories, but the complete absence of written explanation. Delphi's extensive records detailing festivals, offerings, and even routine repairs make no mention of an incomplete column. It is as if the site's custodians chose to erase it from memory, leaving only the stone itself to speak. Was it shame? Was it reverence? Or something more mysterious, a secret that had to remain unspoken? Modern archaeologists have tried to retrace the techniques used. They discovered small wedge holes along the column's base places where metal pins would have been inserted to separate the drum from the bedrock. Yet those holes remain unfilled, suggesting the process never even reached the extraction phase. The sculptors were still in the shaping stage, giving form to the column while it was still rooted in the earth. This indicates a deliberate workflow the Greeks preferred, carving pillars directly from the quarry, then cutting them free only when the shape was perfect. To leave it half-carved implies that the decision to stop came suddenly before even the initial phase was complete. And yet, remarkably, the tools were never recovered. No chisels, hammers, or remnants were found around the site, as if the workers packed up calmly and walked away, never to return. Over the centuries, the unfinished column of Delphi has become a magnet for not only archaeologists, but also for those fascinated by the mysteries that history refuses to explain. Many alternative researchers believe this column predates the classical Greek era, entirely a relic from an unknown civilization that once occupied the sacred mountain before the rise of Apollo's temple. They argue that when the Greeks found it, they may have tried to reshape it, only to abandon the effort upon realizing its ancient, perhaps divine origin. Others point to the stone's remarkable smoothness and symmetry, claiming that such precision could not have been achieved with bronze or copper tools known at the time. This has fueled speculation about lost technologies, or even forgotten civilizations whose knowledge vanished long before written history began. While traditional archaeology rejects these theories as speculation, it still acknowledges one undeniable fact: the craftsmanship of the Delphi column defies easy explanation, standing as a silent challenge to what we think we know about the limits of ancient skill and human history itself. Delphi was once alive, with voices, pilgrims, priests, and prophecies echoing through marble courtyards. Today, it is eerily quiet. The unfinished column, still embedded in its rocky cradle, remains a silent witness to everything that followed: the collapse of the oracle, the rise of Rome, the spread of Christianity, and the fading of the ancient gods. It stands as a monument to interruption, to the moment when human endeavor meets forces beyond understanding. In that silence, visitors feel something profound, not failure, but mystery preserved. For centuries, the unfinished column of Delphi has symbolized the beauty of imperfection, a reminder that even the greatest civilizations understood human limits. Some mysteries are meant to stay half-carved, half-hidden. Standing before it, one can almost feel the mason's last touch, frozen in time. Perhaps that's its true purpose, to remind us that not every story must end, and what remains unfinished may be what endures forever.